the perverted pig pounced over. Yet when he discovered that he had only caught a bone in his mouth, he couldn't help but feel enraged. Are you fucking born in the year of the dog? You actually managed to gnaw on the bones so cleanly that not even a single shred of meat can be found. Yet Ling Han was shocked. She was actually the one who had planted the weapon-nurturing tree. Impossible, that weapon-nurturing tree had been planted for at least a few dozen years, and her age didn't match at all. I just thrashed that lazy dog, and now it's your turn. The young girl waved her hand, and her belt loosened, actually turning into a whip. Hearing the words lazy dog, Ling Han was sure that this young girl was not just spouting nonsense. Otherwise, she should not have known that the weapon-nurturing tree was guarded by a demonic dog of extreme bone tier. Pa! The young girl raised the whip, and instantly, a loud bang rang out from the whip, overflowing with a terrifying aura. This was the aura of extreme bone tier, and it was possible that it was at the level of 4th extreme or even 5th extreme. At this moment, Ling Han finally believed that the lazy dog was raised by the young girl. The weapon-nurturing tree had been planted by the young girl, and in fact, this wasn't a young girl at all. She just looked relatively young. Senior, I have been impolite. He clasped his fists. How have you been impolite? The young girl paled in confusion and looked Ling Han up and down. You're not disheveled. So what do you mean by impolite? That's right, brat, don't interrupt. I'm here to slap you. This young girl's ability to understand was very problematic. Ling Han sighed and said, I also didn't know that the weapon-nurturing tree was planted by Senior. That's why I plucked a few. How about this? I'll compensate Senior, all right? No wonder the academy didn't give him any trouble. As it turned out, it was this young girl who had planted it. Naturally, the owner would come personally to collect the debt. The young girl glared at him. Could it be that you don't know how to read? I planted a plaque at the foot of the mountain with a warning. She was the one who had written the warning sign. Ling Han sighed and said, Senior, name a price. I'll definitely try my best to compensate you. Compensation is one matter, but you stole from me, so if I don't beat you up, I won't be satisfied. The young girl cracked the whip loudly. The perverted pig retreated quietly. Faced with such a situation, he naturally ran without any loyalty. He only pitted his roasted mutton. Bastard. Thoughts streaked through Ling Han's mind, and he said with a smile, Senior, you're an extreme bone tier elite, while I'm only a first change. It's not good for you to bully me like this, right? Why don't we suppress our cultivation level and battle at the same cultivation level? The young girl sneered. I have come to thrash you, not to compete with you. Why should I suppress my cultivation level and have a fair battle with you? Then it would naturally be because Senior is frank and upright, and would not take advantage of a junior. Ling Han flattered her. He had no wish to be thrashed madly, and he knew himself well. This young girl's cultivation level was at least 4th extreme, and there was absolutely no way he could match her. Hence, if the other was willing to suppress her cultivation level for a battle, he would have nothing to fear. The young girl thought seriously for a moment, then said, In a battle of equal cultivation levels, I am no match for you. I am not doing it. Fuck. You're far too stubborn. This seemed to be a little similar to someone. Ling Han probed. You're just a little girl whose hair hasn't even grown completely, and you keep calling yourself this lady. Aren't you embarrassed? It's not fully grown? The young girl looked confused. She turned around, pulled down her pants for a look, then said, It's clearly fully grown. Fine, I understand now. Ling Han asked, What relation does Senior have with Gu Qiuling? Previously, he had only seen such a stubborn young man. If it was claimed that there was no relation between the two of them, Ling Han would not believe it even if he was beaten to death. The young girl couldn't help but be startled, and asked, You know that little bastard? Gu Qiuling is my friend, Ling Han said with a smile. The young girl cocked her head and considered for a while, then said, Gu Qiuling is my son. Ling Han gritted his teeth. If these two people stood together, anyone would think that they were siblings, right? He could only nod and say, Senior has really taken good care of yourself. The perverted pig looked at her in disdain. This wasn't about taking good care of herself, but about how abnormally tender this little girl was. Yet the young girl said seriously, I have cultivated the Crimson Sun Chaos Heaven Scroll, so the change in my appearance is extremely slow. It is the same for even my body. So that was how it was. Ling Han nodded internally. It was not just her appearance and body. No matter how he looked at it, even her temperament was the same. She did not even know how to tell lies. Since you're the friend of that bastard, I don't think I can slap you anymore. The young girl hesitated, but she had ran over angrily, so to just leave like that seemed a little inexcusable. She sighed and said, Then those few weapon-nurturing leaves will be my gift to you for our first meeting. Thank you, Senior. Ling Han clasped his hands and bowed. He had to admit that those weapon-nurturing leaves had helped him greatly. First, he had suppressed Hu Yang, and then they helped him obtain the honey and thousand-year vermilion fruits. I'm leaving. The young girl was very decisive, and tied the whip back to her waist. Then, with a leap, she leaped over the wall and left. Senior, I still don't know your name? Ling Han asked loudly. Gu Qiuyue. The young girl's voice was heard from afar. Gu Qiuyue? The corners of Ling Han's mouth twitched again. Was she so focused on cultivation that she could not even come up with a good name? Gu Qiuyue and Gu Qiuling. Who wouldn't think that they were siblings? With this kind of mother, it was no wonder that Gu Qiuling had developed a personality like that. Though he was a little too straightforward, this kind of character was definitely much better than something like a hypocrite. At least, when dealing with this kind of person, there was no need to worry that he would be betrayed. Ling Han breathed a sigh of relief. He had initially planned to use the shuttle steps to flee. At 2 times the speed of sound, Gu Qiuyue definitely wouldn't be able to catch up to him. However, while he could flee for a while, he wouldn't be able to flee for the rest of his life. Thus, it was best to resolve this peacefully. However, he could be considered to have owed the Gu clan a great favor, so he would just return it to Gu Qiuling. He roasted another lamb leg and shared it with the little perverted pig. The next morning, after he finished cultivating, he took a few pieces of honey and sought out Gu Qiuling. Gu Qiuling was baffled. However, this was given to him by his big brother, so, as a lackey, there was naturally no reason not to accept. Thus, he accepted it without hesitation. Ling Han thought for a moment, then went to the Alchemist Association. He was a high-level alchemist, but before the headquarters could confirm it, Huju City was destroyed by the beast tide. Now that he had come to the imperial capital, he naturally had to settle this matter as well. After all, having the identity of a high-level alchemist would make things much more convenient for him. He hailed a cab and very soon he arrived at the Alchemist Association. If he traveled on his own, his speed would be considerably faster, but firstly, there was no need, and secondly, if he traveled like this in the imperial capital, who knew how much damage he would cause? He would definitely be hunted down. Alchemist Association. No uninvolved person is allowed to enter. Ling Han walked up the long flight of stairs. Before he even entered, he was stopped by the guards. He smiled and said, My name is Ling Han, and I am an alchemist here. The guard was skeptical. Though he did not dare say that he knew all the alchemists here, Ling Han was really too unfamiliar. He pointed to the side and said, Then scan your fingerprint. Ling Han pressed his finger down, and the result was a red light flashing. This meant that it had not been approved, and entry was forbidden. The guard immediately humphed and said, Don't cause trouble. Leave immediately, or I will inform the Imperial Guards to apprehend you. The Alchemist Association was one of the most important places in the Imperial City. If anything happened here, it would indeed alert the Imperial Guards. Ling Han's brow wrinkled into a frown. After what had happened to Huju City, his status had indeed not been confirmed. He didn't have the habit of venting his anger, so he settled for the next best thing and said, Then I'll certify as an alchemist. The guard looked at him, his expression guarded. One moment you said that you are an alchemist, and the next moment you said that you wanted to be certified as an alchemist. Wasn't that contradicting yourself? However, he couldn't forbid others from coming here to be certified as an alchemist. He hesitated for a moment, then said, All right, register here, and I'll report it to the higher-ups. He operated the optical computer, allowing Ling Han to enter his information. Ling Han filled it in truthfully. There was naturally no need to hide this. After the guard entered the information, he immediately checked Ling Han's details. A student of the Imperial Capital Academy. He breathed a sigh of relief. Since he was a student of the Imperial Academy, the possibility of him having ulterior motives was practically zero. He gave Ling Han a temporary identification card, which he clipped on his chest, and then allowed Ling Han to pass. Ling Han entered the Alchemist Association. This place was naturally astonishingly huge, and there was even a forest behind it. He arrived at the reception desk and registered the purpose of his trip to certify as an alchemist. The staff at the reception desk glanced at him and couldn't help but look surprised. He was so young, and he was already going to be certified as an alchemist? His future prospects were boundless. The staff was a woman, and she was quite beautiful. At first, she was very aloof, but when she found out that Ling Han was going to be certified as an alchemist, she immediately became incredibly cordial. Alchemists had a transcendent status, and they could also earn huge amounts of money. What woman didn't want to marry an alchemist? Thus, seeing how young Ling Han was, this beauty at the reception desk was naturally moved. She served tea and water, trying her best to leave a good impression on Ling Han. Ling Han was naturally unmoved. After a while, someone came to inform him that he could proceed with the verification. However, because an elementary-level alchemist needed to prepare their own ingredients, Ling Han first went to buy a portion of ingredients and then followed. This naturally made the 3 elementary-level alchemists responsible for witnessing this extremely displeased. One of them was more mean, and immediately expressed his displeasure towards Ling Han. Ling Han ignored him and only looked at him for a while longer. "What are you looking at? Remember, my name is Lu Bu," this elementary-level alchemist said arrogantly. Because his uncle was a middle-level alchemist, he had always been arrogant. Even other elementary-level alchemists weren't worthy of his notice. Ling Han smiled faintly and began to concoct alchemical pills. 2 hours later, the pill was completed. Lu Bu's expression was slightly ugly. He very much hoped that Ling Han would fail, but the latter had succeeded, which was equivalent to a slap to his face. "Congratulations." The other 2 clasped their hands in Ling Han's direction, all smiles. Ling Han nodded and said, "I want to continue certifying as a middle-level alchemist." As soon as the words left his mouth, the 2 alchemists who were congratulating him couldn't help but be stunned. Was there anyone who would continue to certify like this? In the past, there had indeed been people who showed off like this before. They had never been certified as an elementary-level alchemist, and it was only when their abilities had reached the level of middle-level alchemist that they had shocked the world with a single feat and were also seen as a model example of showing off. However, how many people could endure this kind of solitude? They could obviously enjoy the treatment of an elementary-level alchemist, yet they had to suffer in silence for more than 10 years or even in fact for several decades. Moreover, Ling Han was too young. He looked to be only 18 or 19 years old, so how could he possibly become a middle-level alchemist? However, the certification of a middle-level alchemist was the basic right of every alchemist. As long as it was an elementary-level alchemist, it was fine. Thus, the 2 of them naturally had no reason to refuse, and could only report this to their superiors. "Haha! You want to be certified as a middle-level alchemist?" Lu Bu couldn't help but mock. Ling Han glanced at him and said, "Are you a despicable person? What business is it of yours whether I authenticate as a middle-level alchemist or not? There is no need for you to witness this, nor is there any place for you to agree or refuse. Why are you jumping around so happily?" A vein popped on Lu Bu's forehead. He swore internally that he would definitely make Ling Han suffer so much that he wanted to die, of course. He did not even think that Ling Han could possibly become a middle-level alchemist. With his uncle's reputation, it would still be quite easy for him to deal with an elementary-level alchemist. Very soon, 3 middle-level alchemists arrived. This was the imperial capital, and although the number of middle-level alchemists was not overwhelming, it was at least more than 10 times more than other cities. Now that everyone was here, Ling Han took out his own ingredients. In any case, the alchemical pill he concocted would belong to him. He proficiently flipped through the medicinal ingredients. Then, he activated the formation and began concocting. 2 hours passed, and he naturally succeeded easily. The 3 middle-level alchemists appraised the pills and revealed shocked expressions. Not only had he succeeded, but the quality was also astonishingly high. Such a young man who hadn't even reached 20 years old actually became a middle-level alchemist? Just look at them. Which one of them was not in their 50s or 60s? To compare oneself with another, it was really infuriating. Meanwhile, Lu Bu felt a strong chill. He had never imagined that Ling Han would really be able to become a middle-level alchemist. This was too ridiculous. Too ridiculous. He naturally regretted it. Why had he trifled with Ling Han? He really had a stinky mouth. However, he couldn't bring himself to beg for mercy from Ling Han. In any case, his uncle was also a middle-level alchemist. He was no weaker than Ling Han, and was much more experienced. Thus, as long as he didn't trifle with Ling Han in the future, Ling Han wouldn't dare to do anything to him. Ling Han smiled and said, "I want to continue to be certified as a high-level alchemist." No one spoke. However, everyone looked at Ling Han as if they were looking at a lunatic. Wasn't this a joke? Ling Han had already seen this kind of gaze and reaction many times. Who asked him to be the alchemy emperor? He was always able to perform miracles. No one could stop an alchemist from being certified as a higher-level alchemist, as long as they conformed to the rules. Thus, someone immediately went to ask for the help of a high-level alchemist. This would take some time. Even the Alchemy Association only had a dozen or so high-level alchemists. Everyone was studying alchemy, and they were the kind of people that would lock themselves up for a few days and nights at the drop of a hat. More than an hour later, 3 high-level alchemists reluctantly came over. If that middle-level alchemist had not succeeded, they would definitely give him a harsh thrashing. He actually dared to interrupt their research. Lord Chairperson, someone suddenly exclaimed. Instantly, everyone turned to look at a short old geezer. This was Chairperson Qi Liandong, the chairperson of the Alchemist Association, the only Grandmaster Alchemist in the entire Dark North Nation. Qi Liandong nodded slightly at everyone. He had heard that someone was going to be certified as a high-level alchemist, so he was naturally alerted as well. Especially when this was a young man who had not even reached 20 years old. He was filled with anticipation. "Greetings, Lord Chairperson." The 3 high-level alchemists also paid their respects solemnly. Could be said that all of the high-level alchemists of the Dark North Nation had received guidance from Qi Liandong. Without his selfless guidance, it would have been impossible for them to have their current accomplishments. Thus, Qi Liandong's reputation was extremely high. "Young man, are you confident?" Qi Liandong asked Ling Han. Ling Han gave an "oh," and said, "No big deal." How boastful. Everyone shook their heads. In the whole Dark North Nation, there were only over 40 high-level alchemists. Which one of them wasn't an elder that was about 100 years old? It was already inconceivable for a youngster like you to be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with them, and you still have to act so laid back? Qi Liandong's eyes turned, and he asked, "Are you Ling Han, who has come from Huju City?" He finally remembered that before Huju City was destroyed, an application had once been sent to the headquarters, and that was to apply for the position of high-level alchemist for a young man called Ling Han. However, when the news came back, no one dared to believe it, and only thought that Huju City had made a mistake. However, before the two sides had finished communicating, Huju City was destroyed, so this matter had also become an unsolved case. As soon as realization dawned on him, Qi Liandong immediately connected Ling Han with that person in Huju City. Ling Han smiled and said, "I have indeed come from Huju City." When these words fell, the 3 high-level alchemists all gave an "oh," revealing expressions of realization. They naturally were qualified to know about this as well. However, the others were confused. They didn't know why Qi Liandong would suddenly say such a thing. "Begin." Qi Liandong waved his hand dismissively. At first, he had not believed that a young man in his 20s could become a high-level alchemist, but now he was at least 90% convinced. However, merely him believing was useless. Ling Han had to use his actions to prove it. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to convince the masses. Ling Han set up the formation and immediately began to work. Everyone was surprised. It should be known that concocting alchemical pills was an extremely taxing matter on one's spirit. Ordinarily, one would only be able to concoct 1 cauldron a day, but Ling Han, on the other hand, not only had he concocted 2 cauldrons in a row, he actually was going to start a 3rd cauldron. If he could succeed even in such a manner, that would really be illogical. However, something illogical happened right in front of their eyes. Ling Han controlled the formation with precision, and there was not the slightest sign that the furnace was about to explode. Everyone felt their scalps go numb. What kind of monster was this? Even Qi Liandong was slightly moved, though he had long since believed that Ling Han had that kind of strength. For it to be so easy for him to concoct a high-level alchemical pill was really inconceivable. 2 hours later, the pill was completed. The 3 high-level alchemists examined it one by one, and very soon they came to a conclusion. Not only had Ling Han successfully concocted the pill, the grade of the completed pill was also very high. Instantly, a commotion arose among the people in the surroundings. Heavens, the Alchemist Society actually produced a high-level alchemist who was not even 20 years old yet. This time, they were no weaker than the Formations Association because they had Hong Tianbu, who was only 23 years old but was already a high-level formation master. In comparison, the Alchemy Association was practically trash. However, Ling Han's appearance changed everything. A high-level alchemist under 20 years old, even Hong Tianbu would feel ashamed of his inferiority, though the two were in completely different fields. Meanwhile, the corners of Lu Bu's mouth twitched, feeling bitterness fill his mouth. Around him, everyone deliberately maintained their distance, standing at least 3 meters away from him. A great many people had seen it. Lu Bu was shouting at Ling Han, so how could Ling Han not get his revenge? To say nothing of the fact that there was only a middle-level alchemist behind Lu Bu, even if it was a high-level alchemist, everyone would probably still have their hearts set on Ling Han. Couldn't be helped. Ling Han was too young, and his future prospects were limitless. If they really had to bet on one person, that would definitely be Ling Han. Everyone looked at Lu Bu as if they were looking at a dead man. After offending a high-level alchemist, how could he continue to stay in the Alchemist Society? Ha ha ha! Qi Liandong laughed loudly. He was too happy and personally walked over. He held Ling Han's hand, and it could not be more obvious that he held Ling Han in high regard. He gave a speech that made one's blood boil. The general idea was that Ling Han had appeared in the Alchemy Association, and there was no need to worry that the Formations Association would mock them for not having a prodigy that they could show off. Ling Han couldn't help but grimace. If Qi Liandong knew that he was a formation prodigy, what kind of expression would he have? Forget it, it was better not to say anything. Ling Han's aim wasn't merely to obtain the title of high-level alchemist. He also wanted to obtain more pill recipes. After becoming a high-level alchemist of the headquarters, Ling Han obtained a great amount of authority to browse through all kinds of high-level alchemical pill recipes. In reality, there were only 7 pill recipes that he couldn't see at the moment. 5 of them were at the Grandmaster level and 2 were at high level. He would need to stay in the Alchemist Society for many years, or only after he had performed a great merit would he be able to unlock them. Ling Han temporarily didn't need to use high-level alchemical pills, so he wasn't in too much of a rush. He could take it slow. After staying in the Alchemist Society for a day, he memorized all of the pill recipes. It was not allowed to record them with the optical computer, and if it was found, there would be severe punishment. He could only memorize them. If he forgot it, he would just look at it when he came back. Ling Han returned to the academy. Right now, his focus was still on the academy. He had not even sat down properly when he saw Xianyuan Dinghua pay him another visit. Ling Han, did you receive any notice? He asked. What notice? Ling Han countered. You still haven't received the notification? Impossible, with your strength, you should have received the notification. Xianyuan Dinghua murmured, appearing very confused. Ling Han smiled and said, What exactly is it? Don't just tell me half the story. Oh, Xianyuan Dinghua nodded before explaining. The Holy Emperor, His Majesty, decided yesterday to host a hunting competition. Aside from the young imperial princes, there will also be the descendants of the various ministers, as well as the excellent disciples of the Academy. If anyone can get first place, the Holy Emperor, His Majesty, will personally choose a martial arts technique that is most suitable for him and bestow it to the winner. Xianxia Dinggua's eyes lit up. He wanted nothing more than for the competition to start now so that he could take the first initiative. Ling Han, did you hear that? The martial arts technique that is most suited to you. He shook Ling Han's shoulders, almost shaking Ling Han to the point of falling apart. All right. I know. Ling Han nodded. Unfortunately, you didn't receive the notice, so you can't participate. Xianxia Dingua sighed, but then said with a smile, that's good too. I can also have one less competitor. Ling Han rolled his eyes. Saying such words right in front of me? Don't you think that's going too far? Haha. If worst comes to worst, I'll treat you to a drink after I win first place. Xianxia Dingua laughed loudly, then frowned. However, there will definitely be countless competitors this time. Though the young imperial princes are not as talented as His Majesty's first few sons, they are still the sons of the Holy Emperor, after all. The bloodline is clear for all to see, and their strength should not be underestimated. There's also Qin Xingho and the others. It's not just these guys. I reckon even those brothers of mine will be attending. This is the ultimate technique taught personally by the Holy Emperor. Who can resist such temptation? Although Hong Tianbu had the reputation of being a freakish prodigy, no one had ever thought that he could surpass the current Holy Emperor one day. In everyone's eyes, His Majesty was no longer human, but rather a god. Ling Han also found this strange. Since outstanding disciples of the Academy also had the right to participate in the hunting competition, why hadn't he been informed? Could it be that he was not outstanding enough? Or was it that someone was deliberately playing dirty tricks and disqualified him? I'll help you investigate, Xianxia Dingua immediately said. He valued this partner very much. In the future, if he wanted to attain great accomplishments, he definitely would need Ling Han's help. An excellent alchemist would be the strongest support in the world. He left in a hurry. Since Ling Han was idle, he began to concoct alchemical pills. After refining 2 cauldrons, he suddenly received a message on the optical computer. He looked at it and saw that it was a seller. He had the hard bone skin for sale. This was one of the 8 ingredients necessary to concoct the antidote for the soul-departing pill. Ling Han asked for the price and the other offered 4 million. It was very expensive. In fact, it wasn't even worth it because although hard bone skin was rare, it wasn't very useful. However, Ling Han didn't mind this. What he lacked the least was money. He made an appointment with the other party. Because the other party was also in the imperial capital, they decided to begin the transaction tomorrow afternoon. At noon the next day, after Ling Han finished his meal, he set out with the little perverted pig. He had to be prepared in case. What if that person had dug a trap for him? Though the perverted pig did not have much battle prowess, his defense was very strong and could block attacks for him. The perverted pig naturally wouldn't know his thoughts. Otherwise, it would definitely go berserk. However, even if it went berserk, it wouldn't do anything. Would it be able to resist Ling Han? Ling Han took a cab and arrived at the location that the two of them had agreed upon. Why was he so careful? That was because the other party was only willing to let him decide the time, but the location had to be decided by him. This was a little inappropriate. Aside from the perverted pig, Ling Han also had 4 weapon nurturing leaves and the essence nurturing gourd, giving him enough confidence to make this trip. Half an hour later, he arrived at his destination. This place was very remote, and the buildings were all very low and dilapidated. The people walking on the streets were also dressed very poorly, giving Ling Han the first impression that this was a slum. "Young man, are you really going to get off here?" the driver asked. "Don't blame me for not reminding you. This place is quite chaotic, and theft, robbery, and even murder are common here." Ling Han smiled and said, "It's fine. I can protect myself. Thank you, uncle." He used the optical computer to transfer the money over, then got out of the car. The driver shook his head and hurriedly drove off. Staying here for a while longer was a dangerous thing. Ling Han picked up the little perverted pig and strode forwards. This was his first time here, so he was naturally unfamiliar with it. He had to find the place. Garuru! The little perverted pig was furious. You guys actually dare to treat Lord Pig like food? Are you tired of living? After Ling Han searched for a while, he finally found the promised place. There was a massive white poplar tree at the entrance, and its crown stretched out to a radius of 30 meters. He arrived at the door and knocked. Very soon, the door cracked open, and a head poked out. He first looked left and right, and then asked Ling Han, "So you are Han Lin?" This was the name that Ling Han had used on the internet. Ling Han nodded, and replied, "Yes, come in." That person withdrew his head, then opened the great doors, allowing Ling Han to enter. So polite. You even brought a little pig." That person swept an eye over it, and couldn't help but lick his lips, slightly drooling. This was a slum, and living was already difficult enough, what more eating meat? What more when it was a small suckling pig? Who would be willing to take out such a small pig to eat? They would definitely have to raise it until it was larger. The little perverted pig was instantly anxious. Had none of you eaten meat for 3 lifetimes? It was one thing for those people to stare at it just now, but now this guy actually dared to say it out loud? "Show, I'll jump." This fat pig struggled to jump out of Ling Han's arms. With a paw, it landed on the ground, and ran with all its might to that person's feet. Then, it opened its mouth and bit over. "Hee, we haven't eaten it yet, and it's already biting us," the man said with a smile. The perverted pig's defense was invincible, but his battle prowess was only trash. Biting didn't hurt at all. He reached out to grab it. "I'll send it to the kitchen immediately. Wash it clean and put it in the pot." The little perverted pig was even more furious. "Bite. I'll bite with all my might, bastard." Ling Han laughed loudly, and stretched out a hand to snatch the little perverted pig over. He said, "Let's discuss business first." That person glanced at Ling Han, and looked displeased. However, he suppressed his displeasure and nodded. "All right." After entering, there was a small courtyard, and after passing through the courtyard, there was the main hall. This hall was also dilapidated, and even the roof was leaking. If it rained, there would definitely be rainwater seeping into the rooms. The furnishings in the room were very simple. There was only an 8 Immortals table and 4 chairs. A man in his 40s was presently seated behind the 8 Immortals table. His feet were bare, and one was resting on another chair. What a serious ruffian. Ling Han looked at this man, and asked, "Wolf 7, have you brought the money?" The middle-aged man asked instead of answering. Ling Han took off the bag on his back. It was filled with jade seeds. The other party had clearly said that he would only accept a direct transaction of jade seeds. This was also another reason why Ling Han didn't trust the other party. He didn't complete the transaction on the platform. He clearly didn't want to leave a record. Ling Han was willing to come because the other party had taken a photo of hard-bone skin, and there was also the daily paper of the imperial capital that had just been published yesterday. Thus, it was true that the other party had hard-bone skin, but the possibility of him wanting to rob and then kill him was also extremely high. "Where's the hard-bone skin?" he asked. The middle-aged man glanced at Ling Han before taking out a black-colored item from his pocket. It was wrapped in a cloth, and he placed it on the table. The person who had led Ling Han in began to examine the jade seeds. Meanwhile, Ling Han took the black cloth and opened it. There was something that looked like a bone inside, but the veined patterns also made it seem like the skin of a pig. Smelling it again, there was also a sweet and bitter smell. It really was the hard bone skin. On the other side, the man had also finished examining the jade seeds and nodded at the middle-aged man. "All right, you can leave now," the middle-aged man said. His attitude wasn't very nice, but Ling Han didn't take it to heart. He put the hard-bone skin away, then turned around and left. "Leave the hard-bone skin behind," the middle-aged man said from behind him. Ling Han paused, and turned around. "Oh, why?" Leave behind the hard-boned skin, and you can walk out of here alive. Otherwise, you can only leave horizontally, the middle-aged man said calmly. Ling Han sighed and said, Actually, I really don't like fighting with others. I don't like it either. The middle-aged man revealed a smile. It's good that everyone can reach a consensus. Hee, you can save yourself and we can also save some energy. Oh, that's right. Don't forget to leave the pig behind. He looked at the little perverted pig. And he had only heard that roasted suckling pig was very delicious. Today he could finally have a good meal. The little perverted pig bared its teeth, making a threatening gesture. If you want to eat me, you can do it in your next life. Ling Han shook his head. Are you going to go back on your word? Is word more important or your life more important? It can't be that you can't even differentiate this, right? The middle-aged man asked with a smile. Ling Han also smiled and said, With just the two of you? Wrong. The middle-aged man clapped his hands, and instantly, 7 people walked out of the inner courtyard. All of them were holding sabers, and one of them was actually holding a gun. This was a large-caliber gun, and probably even Meridian opening tier elites wouldn't dare to face it head-on. Even if their fists hit the bullets, half of their arms would probably explode. 9 against 1, and we have a gun. If you don't want to die, get lost. The middle-aged man humphed, a vicious glint in his eyes. In truth, he had scammed Ling Han of a colossal sum of 4 million, and had absolutely no plans to let Ling Han leave alive. However, he had already laid out his plans in the courtyard, and it would be even more convenient for him to snipe him there. Furthermore, it would also be easier to deal with his blood. Ling Han chuckled. I'm so scared. Don't be afraid. As long as you're willing, we won't hurt you either, the middle-aged man said. There is still an ambush outside, right? Ling Han suddenly asked. And the 9 of them were all curious. Who had told him? You tricked me out of 4 million and I only have to make a report, and that would definitely be a major case. Though you guys are hiding in the slums, and the situation here is complicated, if an investigation is really carried out, I can still find you guys. Ling Han explained. In addition to the fact that I've seen you guys before, would you still let me go alive? So, you keep telling me to leave. You should have laid some kind of trap in the courtyard, right? When I came in, it was not activated because you wanted to first confirm if I had really brought the jade seeds. When these words were said, the 9 of them were stunned. This analysis made a lot of sense. But why was this brat still so calm? Shouldn't you be panicking? Ling Han turned around and left, opening the doors and entering into the courtyard. Everyone was surprised. Didn't you know that there was a trap in the courtyard? Why did you jump in even though you knew that it was a fire pit? Weren't you extremely smart just now? Why has your intelligence now become negative again? Let's see what kind of creativity you guys have. Ling Han took a step, and instantly, light flashed around him, turning into an arrow of ice that shot rapidly towards him. As expected, Ling Han nodded internally. When he had entered, he had already sensed the existence of formations in the courtyard. With the strength of his present spiritual power and his understanding of formations, there was absolutely no way this could deceive him. And the reason why he took the initiative to step into the formation was because he wanted to see the might of this formation. Haha, you're seeking death. The middle-aged man and the others all looked pleased at the same time. They knew very well the power of this formation. It could easily kill even a blood transformation tier elite. This was also the reason why they still dared to play Mafia when they didn't even know Ling Han's identity. Ling Han's eyes narrowed slightly. The speed of this ice arrow was very fast, almost reaching extreme bone tier level. He used the shuttle steps, and his speed immediately soared to twice the speed of sound. With a flash, the ice arrow instantly missed its target. What? When the 9 of them saw this, a chill rose up from the bottoms of their hearts. Why did they have to use civility before resorting to force? That was because they were also afraid of coming across a tough opponent. Thus, if the target of the deal was an extreme bone tier, they would obediently complete the deal and definitely wouldn't dare to have any devious thoughts. However, it had already been several years, and they hadn't encountered a single extreme bone tier elite. In fact, they hadn't even come across many blood transformation tier elites. Now, a blood transformation tier elite had actually dodged the attack of the ice arrow, which was naturally inconceivable to them, and caused their scalps to go numb. If Ling Han charged out of the formation, then wouldn't they be in deep trouble? There's no need to be afraid. Once this formation is activated, the attacks will be endless. This brat can dodge the first attack, but he won't be able to dodge the second, the third, and he can't even think about coming back out alive, the middle-aged man said confidently. Everyone nodded. They were similarly filled with confidence in this formation. Ling Han dodged, and the ice arrows shot out endlessly from all corners. It was as if there were a considerable number of elites of extreme bone tier taking turns to attack. This was very dangerous. Thankfully, Ling Han's physique had become stronger, and his use of shuttle steps was also possible for far more than half a minute. As he dodged, he continued to study the formation, searching for nodes. This was a high-level formation technique, and for Ling Han it was a little straining because he had not yet begun to cultivate a high-level formation technique, but actual battle was the best teacher, what more when it was easier to destroy than to construct. Xiao, an ice arrow streaked past beneath his ribs, and tore through his clothes. Though it did not touch his skin, the cold air invaded, causing a block of ice to instantly form there. Very good. The middle-aged man and the others all cheered. Quick! Take this chance to shoot and kill him, the middle-aged man said to the only gun-wielding man. Previously, Ling Han's speed was too fast, and he couldn't aim accurately at all. The gunner hesitated, then said, "But the sound of the shot would be too loud, and could possibly bring trouble to us. What are you afraid of? Which bastard here dares to expose us?" The middle-aged man said viciously. The gunner had no choice but to point his weapon at Ling Han. However, Ling Han only paused for a moment before immediately recovering to twice the speed of sound. How was he supposed to aim? Just shoot blindly? Wasn't that a joke? Xiao, another arrow of ice shot over. Ling Han was already unable to change his course, and just when it looked like he was about to be hit, he stretched out his hand. Pa, the arrow of ice arrived. Very good. The middle-aged man and the others shouted again. However, what they heard was not Ling Han's cries of pain, but the cries of a pig. What was going on? Ling Han withdrew his hand. He had used the little perverted pig to block this arrow. Though the ice arrows driven by this formation had the might of extreme bone tier, it was more reflected in the coldness and speed. However, the power of the arrows wasn't great, so he wasn't sent flying by the counterforce. As expected, the little perverted pig was completely fine, and merely screamed out of habit. This perverted pig glared fiercely at Ling Han, its teeth itching. If it could, it would definitely bite Ling Han's behind to pieces. Pa pa, pa pa. Ling Han continued to use the little perverted pig to block arrows, fully observing this formation. After a long while, a smile appeared on his face. He shifted his feet, and no more arrows of ice actually shot out. But in the next instant, he immediately moved again and stepped on another spot. Still, no ice arrow shot out. This meant that Ling Han had stepped into a safe zone. However, this safe zone was constantly changing, so Ling Han also had to move continuously, constantly stepping on this safe zone. Otherwise, there would be more arrows of ice flying towards him. After all, the formation had not shut down yet. However, this had already stunned the middle-aged man and the others to speechlessness. They had never encountered such a thing before. He had not even finished the thought, when Ling Han had already taken a few steps back and reappeared in the main hall. He broke into a grin. "I have tried out the formation and it has some might." Faced with Ling Han's words, the 9 people didn't know what expressions they should have. "You're far too good at showing off." However, Ling Han was indeed qualified to show off, making them tremble. This person was too terrifying. Oh no, it seemed like they had scammed the wrong person. "Don't come over. Don't come over." The gunner pointed the muzzle at Ling Han. Though Ling Han's speed could reach 2 times the speed of sound at such a close distance, the speed of the bullet shooting out of the chamber could reach 3 times the speed of sound. It was not much different and was definitely not something that Ling Han could dodge. Though that was the logic, the hand of the man with the gun was trembling endlessly. He was really afraid. Shoot him dead, the middle-aged man shouted. Ling Han glanced at him and said, "So noisy." Xiao, with a flash, he had already appeared in front of the gun-wielding man. He stretched out his right hand, and everyone felt their vision blur. They saw that the gun had already fallen into Ling Han's hand. The 9 people couldn't help but swallow with great difficulty. Now, the formation was useless, and the gun had also been snatched. What else could they do? "Pa!" The middle-aged man immediately knelt down and said, Brother, we were just playing around with you." Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Open your mouth." The middle-aged man didn't dare to keep his mouth shut. Immediately, he felt a coldness in his mouth as an ice-cold barrel was stuffed into his mouth. Instantly, his legs became weak because he knew the power of this gun. If he were to pull the trigger with the gun held against his throat like this, his whole head would explode. "Pa!" Ling Han suddenly shouted. The middle-aged man's legs immediately became weak, and he collapsed onto the ground. A fishy smell wafted out, and he had actually wet himself in fright. "Oh, I was just playing around with you," Ling Han said with a smile. The middle-aged man was about to collapse. He looked at Ling Han with an aggrieved gaze. "Brother, you're going to scare people to death." Ling Han's hands gripped the gun, and with a twist, the steel, forged gun turned into a twisted ball of metal. Hiss! The 9 of them felt a chill in their hearts at the same time, and looked at Ling Han's hands in disbelief. If their arms or necks were twisted by these hands, what would happen? Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Come, tell me all the dirty dealings you've done all these years. If anyone lies, I'll break his neck." The 9 of them did not dare to say anything, and spat out all the evil deeds they had done all these years. Originally, they were the thugs here. Usually, they would only do some shady business of bullying both men and women, and this could not be considered much. It was right until 7 years ago that the middle-aged man had stolen from a martial arts elite and had been counting his spoils of battle in this courtyard. He had not thought that the latter would actually follow him here. His pleas for mercy were fruitless, and he was struck by the other's sword. However, he accidentally activated the formation buried underground, and that elite was directly turned into an ice statue. After dealing with the elite's corpse, he unexpectedly obtained a piece of hard-boned skin. At first, he had wanted to directly sell it for some money, but afterwards an idea came to him. Why can't he sell it on the online platform and then kill any buyer with the formation? If he sold the hard-boned skin, that would only be a one-time gain, but if he used the hard-boned skin to fish out rich people, that would be an endless stream of income. Unfortunately, the market for hard-boned skin was really too small. After 7 years, added with Ling Han, he had only managed to come to an agreement for a deal with 2 other people. Usually, they would also use the formation to harm others, but it was just a small business, and their income was not high. Added together, it was not as valuable as the sum Ling Han had brought today. Of course, it seemed like they wouldn't be able to succeed today. They would definitely lose everything. As Ling Han listened, the killing intent in his heart gradually rose. Though these 9 people did not have any strength, they had really committed a considerable number of crimes. Because this was a slum, no one would care if someone died, so they would often kill people for fun, and there was no small number of women they had raped. Now, there were 2 of them still imprisoned in the backyard. "Tell me, why should I give you a way out?" he asked. Spare me. Someone was only focused on kowtowing and begging for mercy. "This answer does not satisfy me." Ling Han tapped out a finger and the force passed through. Pa! That person's head immediately exploded, and his headless body collapsed onto the ground, raising dust. There were 9 people, and now there were only 8 left. "What about you?" Ling Han looked towards the second person. "My lord, I'll be your underling. I'll hit whoever you tell me to," that person said. Ling Han shot out another finger, and that person's head also exploded. "I'm still not satisfied." Ling Han shook his head, then looked at the third person. "What about you?" The third person had already wet himself in fright. His lips were trembling, yet he was completely rendered speechless. Ling Han mercilessly shot out a finger, and that person instantly became a headless corpse. What about you? He asked the fourth person. Ignore him. He's completely toying with us. The middle-aged man saw through him and said, no matter what, he'll still kill us. Ling Han clapped his hands and said, finally, there are smart people. Don't kill me. I don't want to die. Someone broke down, collapsing to the ground and wailing. Ling Han looked at him and said, I'm sure you've heard these words yourself many times, but who have you spared? Even though their strongest was no stronger than 10 meridians, there were at least 90 people who had died in the hands of these 9 people, even if not 100. They were really despicable villains. Any last words? Ling Han asked. Spare me. Spare me. Unfortunately, there were really not many strong-willed people. Aside from the middle-aged man, everyone was only begging for mercy. Ling Han did not feel the slightest bit of sympathy. With a tap of his finger, piu, 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 the 6 of them collapsed, one after another, turning into headless corpses. He arrived at the backyard and saw that there were 2 beds laid out inside. On them lay 2 naked women, their hands and feet still tied. Seeing him enter, the 2 women did not have the slightest reaction, as if they had already become numb. Ling Han sighed, walked over and used the broken sword to cut open the ropes around their arms and legs. Then he said softly, It's all right now. Go home. He left some jade seeds for the 2 women, then walked into the courtyard and began to dig. He was very interested in the formations in the courtyard, so he wanted to dig out the formation foundations. After a while, he revealed an expression of surprise. That was because not only was there only 1 formation foundations, it was pitifully small. It was just a small circular plate, on which a great many formation patterns had been erased. It was another item passed down from the ancient times. Ling Han took out the circular plate. It was made of some unknown material and was very heavy. He did not stay here for too long. He stowed the circular plate into the essence nurturing gourd, and immediately set out to return to the academy. After returning to his courtyard, only then did Ling Han take out the circular plate and study it carefully. This material looked like both metal and stone, and when light shone on it, it had the brilliance of a beautiful jade. Looks like high-level formation patterns all needed to be drawn on special materials. Ling Han looked at the formation patterns again. They definitely weren't drawn by blood, and if he were to guess, it was more likely that they were the juice produced by a plant. Interesting. He rubbed the circular plate, deducing the combination effects of formation patterns. Not long after, he revealed a shocked expression, because even if a large number of formation patterns on this circular plate had been destroyed, the remaining formation patterns were enough to unleash the might of inscription tier. It was completely because the activation method was wrong, and that was why it could only unleash the might of extreme bone tier, and it was only the might of first extreme at that. Ling Han secretly called himself lucky. If that bunch of ruffians could unleash the full might of the formation, he would be in big trouble. However, at the very least, there was still the essence nurturing gourd, and the perverted pig could also block attacks for him. Hung. As if sensing his thoughts, the perverted pig rolled his eyes at him. Ling Han continued to study the formation technique. He was sure that if he was given a few days, he would definitely be able to master the formation technique. At night, Xianxia came again. Ling Han. He strode in, an expression of fury on his face. What is it? Ling Han asked with a smile. I've already found out. Someone has indeed removed your qualification, Xianxia said. The present Holy Emperor had issued a decree personally, and there was still someone who dared to mess around? Xianxia shook his head and said, If the Holy Emperor speaks up personally, then naturally no one would dare to touch your place. More importantly, His Majesty still doesn't know of your existence. It's up to Lord Yang to decide who can participate in the hunting competition. Though Lord Yang can be said to be influential, if there are a few imperial princes interfering, it would be a very simple matter to remove a placement. I am sure that Lord Yang would not deliberately pay attention to your matters either. The Lord Yang that he was talking about was naturally the current council chairperson, Yang Bai. Ling Han found this strange and asked, I have not met any imperial prince, so why would there be an imperial prince targeting me? Could it be that his title as the second Hong Tianbu had provoked some imperial prince? To be honest, he didn't like the title of the second Hong Tianbu. He was him, and there was no need for him to drag anyone in to help him win fame. Moreover, he believed that he would definitely be able to surpass Hong Tianbu. Xianyuan Dingwa shook his head and said, I also found it strange, so I went to investigate again. Only then did I find out that there was another person behind this matter. Who? Feng Ruoxian. Fuck, it was actually this woman? Ling Han faltered for a moment. It was Feng Ruoxian who owed him a debt of gratitude and he didn't owe her anything. Yet Feng Ruoxian was repaying his kindness with ingratitude, dragging him down. He felt an urge to hit her. This woman was too disgusting. Wasn't she? What a waste of her pure appearance. Ling Han, didn't you and Feng Ruoxian both come from Huju City? How did you become enemies? Xianyuan Dingwa asked. Ling Han shook his head and said, It's just that I didn't agree to become her subordinate, and she already hates me. Xianyuan Dingwa gaped in shock. She's actually so vengeful? He had seen Feng Ruoxian before. This woman was gentle and graceful, giving off a very comforting feeling. Why was her heart so ugly? Ling Han nodded. Though he had long since known that Feng Ruoxian would be displeased after being rejected, he had never imagined that Feng Ruoxian would report his kindness with enmity. Several imperial princes have joined forces to ban you. This is no easy task, Xianyuan Dingwa said. Ling Han nodded. Although Feng Ruoxian was the mastermind, and she wasn't much in the imperial capital, but with the appearance of several imperial princes, who would dare to stand up for Ling Han? Though these imperial princes were not powerful competitors for the throne, they were still members of the bloodline of the Holy Emperor, after all. Who would dare to publicly disobey them? Forget it, it's just a matter of a martial arts technique. Xianyuan Dingwa patted Ling Han's shoulder and comforted him. If he was General Xianyuan, then there was absolutely no need for him to take to heart this kind of imperial prince that was lower in status among the ranks. He would say whatever he wanted to say, but he was only one of General Xuanyuan's many children, and he wasn't the most outstanding either, so how could he dare to rashly step out? Moreover, even if he was willing to speak up for justice, those imperial princes did not need to give him any face at all. Ling Han nodded at Xianyuan Dingwa and said, Thank you. There was a pent-up anger in his heart. The more people wanted to mess with him, the stronger his backlash would be. No, he definitely could not endure this matter just like that. On the morning of the second day, Ling Han went to the Formation Masters Association. A Formation Master wasn't like an alchemist. They also had battle prowess. Thus, a Formation Master was also qualified to participate in the hunting competition, of course. It had to be an outstanding one. No random person could be used just to make up the numbers. Ling Han had come to find Chun Hao and ask him to give him a qualification to participate. He was the chairperson of the Formation Masters Association, and probably only the current emperor could afford to not give him face. It was really no issue for him to suppress a few imperial princes who were ranked at the bottom. Brat, come. Let's immediately go to the Alchemist Society. Chun Hao was very excited, and Zhong Feiyang was standing beside him. This old man kept thinking of going to the Alchemist Association to show off. Ling Han gritted his teeth. This would be very awkward. Forget it. In any case, he was both a formation master and an alchemist, so what could he do about it? Chairperson, I want to ask you for a favor, Ling Han said. What favor? Chun Hao nodded. Ling Han smiled and said, I would like to ask the chairperson to go out and use your connections to help me get the qualifications to participate in the hunting competition. As a formation master, why do you have to join in on the excitement? Chun Hao was a little curious. Though a formation master also had powerful battle prowess because setting up a formation required time, he was only suited to be a support or had the protection of a cultivator to survive the period of time he needed for setting up a formation. But in the hunting tournament, everyone could only depend on their own strength. Who would help you? I'm just going to take a look. Ling Han smiled and didn't say anything else. All right, Chun Hao agreed. He still admired this prodigious formation master very much. In any case, this was only a small token. It was fine as long as he spoke up. He still had this bit of face. Let's go. He waved his hand and brought Ling Han and Zhong Feiyang out. There was naturally a private car that would take them to the Alchemist Association. The distance between the two headquarters wasn't too far, and they arrived at their destination in just 20 minutes. Chun Hao was the first to disembark. He looked at the structures of the Alchemist Association and couldn't help but chuckle. Today, he was going to make Qi Liandong submit completely. He kept saying that Hong Tianbu could not be considered a real formation master, humph. Greetings, Grandmaster Chun. The chairperson of the Formation Masters Association was personally paying a visit. The guards hurriedly paid their respects. There was naturally no one who didn't know of this mighty figure. Moreover, it wasn't the first time that the old geezer had come here. It was the same for Qi Liandong. He had been to the Formation Masters Association many times, and the two old geezers had already been contending for half their lives. Chun Hao ignored him and walked straight over. The guard didn't dare to stop him. He was very familiar with the surroundings, and very quickly, he arrived at Qi Liandong's study with Ling Han and Zhong Feiyang in tow. Without knocking, he directly pushed open the doors and entered. Old geezer Chun. Qi Liandong's back was facing them, yet he immediately shouted out Chun Hao's name. This was because no one apart from Chun Hao would be so rude. Old geezer Qi. I've come today to make you submit, Chun Hao said proudly. With his status, he was actually only second to one person. Even the council chairman, the four great generals, Grand Tutor Hong, and the others couldn't control him, and he didn't like power either. The only thing he cared about was studying formations and the status of the field of formations. In the Dark North Nation, formations and alchemy were both powerful supports, but Chun Hao was naturally unconvinced. He felt that formations were more outstanding. Thus, he had always disliked Qi Liandong and the Alchemy Society. Qi Liandong immediately turned around, and when his eyes swept over Ling Han, he couldn't help but be startled. Qi Liandong naturally faltered upon seeing Ling Han. Why had Ling Han appeared here? Could it be that it just so happened that Ling Han wanted to ask him for guidance on pill recipes, and in the end encountered Chun Hao and came in with him? Who cares? In any case, he was just wanting to show off Ling Han in front of Chun Hao, which would save him the trouble of calling the latter over. Old geezer Chun, where did you get such courage from? Qi Liandong asked coldly. Hee. Chun Hao laughed. He was just waiting for the other to ask. If he didn't ask, how was he supposed to show off? He cleared his throat and said, Old geezer Qi, let me ask you. Does your alchemy association have any middle-level alchemist under 30 years old? No, Qi Liandong said without hesitation. He indeed didn't have one. There was only a high-level alchemist who wasn't even 20 years old yet. He would scare him to death when he told him later. Unfortunately, the Formations Association has one, Chun Hao said as he entered the show-off segment. Oh, Qi Liandong sneered internally. A mere middle-level formation master, he thought it was some kind of powerful trump card. Let me introduce him to you. Chun Hao pushed out Zhong Feiyang and said, This brat's name is Zhong Feiyang, and he's only 26 years old this year. He's a middle-level formation master. Qi Liandong glanced at Zhong Feiyang and nodded. Indeed, a 26-year-old middle-level formation master could be considered an extremely freakish genius. However, this was not only inferior to Hong Tianbu, but also inferior to Ling Han. Not bad, he said. At this time, he naturally had to praise him a bit. Only then would it hurt even more when he slapped him in the face later. Chun Hao laughed mischievously and said, Old geezer Qi, you also think that this brat is not bad. Hee. There's more. He pushed Ling Han out and said, This brat is dash. Old geezer Chun, hurry up and let go. Do you want to make a move on a junior? How shameless. When Qi Liandong saw this, he immediately became anxious, fearing that Chun Hao would harm Ling Han. Chun Hao was taken aback. This was a prodigy from the Formations Association. Why would I make a move on him? What was wrong with the old geezer? Had he gone crazy? This is a prodigy from our Alchemy Association. Qi Liandong called out again. Chun Hao was completely stupefied upon hearing this. What? Ling Han is a prodigy from your Alchemy Association. You old geezer, you're too shameless, aren't you? No matter how jealous you are of the prodigies of the Formations Association, you can't just distort facts and call one of them a member of your association. Old geezer Chi, what nonsense are you spouting? This is a member of our Formations Association, he emphasized. Bullshit. Qi Liandong was also enraged. This was clearly a high-level alchemist of the Alchemy Association, and he was only 19 years old this year. The prodigy was unimaginably talented, and he actually dared to say that he was a member of the Formations Association? This is clearly a member of our Alchemy Association, he roared. You're the one who's spewing nonsense. This is a member of our Formations Association. Chen Hao didn't hold back either. If he wanted to shout, he would. It wasn't like he hadn't shouted before. The two old geezers whose ages were over 200 years in total were both shouting with flushed faces and raised necks, wanting nothing more than to strangle each other. Zhong Feiyang was dumbfounded. In his eyes, this was a farce. Because this was something that could not be more obvious, the truth could be easily revealed. Why did Qi Liandong say this? He would be exposed in an instant. Let go. You're the one who needs to let go. The two old geezers each pulled on one of Ling Han's arms, both wanting to pull Ling Han over to their side. Zhong Feiyang opened his mouth and said, Ling Han, why don't you explain? This was a very simple matter, yet neither of the two big shots had thought of this. Ling Han gritted his teeth and said, that. How should I put it? I am indeed a middle-level formation master of the Formation Association. What? Qi Liandong was given a fright. Are you joking? Aren't you one of our high-level alchemists? Why are you still a middle-level formation master? Old geezer Qi Liandong, did you hear that? Chen Hao was extremely pleased with himself. He truly didn't know why Qi Liandong was fighting with him. Wasn't this something that could not be clearer? Ling Han chuckled and said, Chairperson Chen, I'm also a high-level alchemist of the Alchemy Association. When these words fell, Chen Hao's jaw dropped, and he looked like an idiot. What scene had the two big shots not seen before? But now they were both stunned. They really didn't believe that anyone could possess astonishing natural talent in both areas at the same time. However, though they mocked, undermined, and contended with each other, after so many years, how could they lack understanding of each other? Although they were fighting, both sides actually appreciated each other's talent. They were sure that neither of them was the type to lie. Zhong Feiyang was also dumbfounded. What was going on? It seemed like his intelligence wasn't enough. Are you really a middle-level formation master? Are you really a high-level alchemist? The two old geezers asked at the same time. Ling Han nodded and said, I am a middle-level formation master, as well as a high-level alchemist. Both are correct. Qi Liandong and Chen Hao exchanged a glance, then said at the same time, Let go. You're the one who needs to let go. This is a prodigy from the Formations Association. Get lost. Ling Han is a high-level alchemist. So what would he care about being a middle-level formation master? Nonsense. Next, I will personally nurture him. I guarantee that in 3 years, no, within a year, this brat will become a high-level formation master. Bullshit, just keep boasting. With 3 years' time, I can send him to the level of Grandmaster Alchemist. The two old geezers fought over Ling Han without any care for their image, both wanting to pull Ling Han over to their side. What a joke. A young man who was not even 20 years old could attain such accomplishments in formations and alchemy at the same time. Then, if he studied one field, his future prospects would be limitless. Perhaps, there would appear a grandmaster below 30 years old. Don't you have Hong Tianbu? Go and find your formation prodigy, Qi Liandong said. Chen Hao rolled his eyes. Hong Tianbu was obsessed with martial arts, and he was only studying formations to make it more convenient for him to explore ancient sites. So how could he possibly put all his energy into it? Hong Tianbu is Hong Tianbu, and Ling Han is Ling Han. Why should I give in to you? Qi Liandong sneered and said, Just the fact that Ling Han is now a high-level alchemist means that he has more future prospects in alchemy. So, It would be best not to waste time on you. Bullshit. If Ling Han had focused all his energy on formations, he would have naturally become a high-level formation master long ago. Chen Hao naturally wouldn't back down. The two old geezers glared at each other again, as if they wanted to kill each other with their gazes. Zhong Feiyang felt like he was in a dream. The two of them were the most powerful people under the Holy Emperor, yet they were actually arguing so intensely. Where was the reservedness of mighty figures? And all this was because of a young man who was not even 20 years old yet. He was also extremely shocked. Ling Han was actually a high-level alchemist? To be honest, he had still been a little dissatisfied when he had lost to Ling Han previously, thinking that he might not have adjusted his condition to the best state. But now he was completely convinced. Probably everyone would have to concede. Was there any such freakish guy? Ling Han smiled and said, "There is no need to fight over this, chairpersons. I am both an alchemist and also a formation master. There is no conflict between the two." "What do you mean there is no conflict?" The two big shots roared at the same time. What a joke. One's energy was limited. If one focused on one matter, it would naturally affect other matters. Moreover, whether it was alchemy or formations, they were both fields that one could possibly not reach the pinnacle even if one spent a whole lifetime's effort, and he still wanted to have both. That person was destined to only be mediocre. Though Ling Han was presently both a high-level alchemist and a middle-level formation master, with the beginning of Great Tao, there was definitely a higher level above Grandmaster level. Furthermore, it was possible that there were a great many levels. This could be deduced from the formations and alchemical pills passed down from ancient times. Thus, one should not bite off more than one can chew. He definitely had to choose one. Ling Han smiled and said, "Then please supervise me, chairpersons. If I am unable to do both, I will definitely only choose one." The two old geezers looked at him, both unwilling to give up. However, firstly, they couldn't suppress the other, and secondly, looking at how Ling Han was acting, it seemed like they wouldn't be able to convince him either. Thus, it was best not to waste time and temporarily accept Ling Han's suggestion. In any case, this guy was still very young. When he crashed into a wall, he would naturally know that he had to make a choice. "Old geezer Chi, it's rare for me to come here. Where's your jade crane spring? Hurry up and take it out for me to taste." Chun Hao loosened his grip and sat down on the side. Not reserved at all. "My precious granddaughter only brews just those few jars every year, and at least half of it goes into your stomach," Qi Liandong complained. Even though he said this, he still brought 2 wine glasses over. "Why are you so stingy? At least half of my flying flower cigarettes was consumed by you," Chen Hao sneered. Right, these two old geezers seemed to be arguing fiercely, but in truth they had quite a good personal relationship. Ling Han and Zhong Feiyang exchanged a glance before exiting the study. "Brother Ling, you're truly freakish," Zhong Feiyang said with emotion. If Ling Han were only a middle-level formation master, he would still think that he wouldn't fall behind, but Ling Han was actually also a high-level alchemist. Though alchemists and formation masters did not belong to the same system, everyone had a criteria for judging in their hearts. Middle-level formation masters naturally corresponded to middle-level alchemists. To be honest, he had to address Ling Han as Lord. At least, he had to address him as Grandmaster. Ling Han smiled and said, "It's just that I've dabbled in a wider range of subjects. They're all miscellaneous knowledge." Zhong Feiyang felt rueful. Was this still considered dabbling? He sighed, and had already given up any thoughts of competing with Ling Han for supremacy. Ling Han had spent half his effort on formations and was still more awesome than him, so how could he compare? He still didn't know that Ling Han was most skilled in martial arts. Right now, he was given the title of the second Hong Tianbu. Otherwise, he would probably start doubting his own life. Perhaps he was hopelessly stupid? Ling Han returned to the academy and continued to observe that circular plate. After a night, he gained a lot of enlightenment. At the same time, his spiritual power also became stronger under the nourishment of the essence nurturing gourd. He was only a sliver away from the high level in spiritual power, and there was also another piece of good news, and that was he was close to reaching the end of his cultivation of the first change. When he cut open a little skin, he would be able to see that his blood was now completely purple in color. In these few days, he would be able to break through to second change. After the morning training ended, Ling Han continued to comprehend that circular plate, but in the afternoon, he suddenly received a notification on the optical computer, telling him to head to the Imperial hunting ground in 5 days to participate in the hunt. In the notification, there were clear rules about what clothes one should wear on this day, and how they should pay their respects to the Holy Emperor when they met him. Old Chun is very efficient, Ling Han said with a smile. He set the matter of the hunting tournament aside first. There were still 5 days, and he wanted to break through to second change before that. Meanwhile, his spiritual power would reach high level, and he would be able to completely unravel, master, and use the formations on this circular plate. In this way, he would be unafraid no matter how strong an opponent he encountered during hunting. In another day's time, his spiritual power reached the high level. He immediately attempted to communicate with the women in the dimensions inside his body again. This time, he finally obtained a massive breakthrough. He could communicate with the people inside. Though it was only communication on a mental level, it was enough for them to express their longing for each other, resolving the hardship of not being able to see each other. And this also gave Ling Han great motivation. He was sure that with his spiritual power advancing a few steps further, he would definitely be able to release the people in the dimensions inside his body. He tried to channel his spiritual power to see how much it could increase his battle prowess. However, the result disappointed him. Even with his high-level spiritual power, he could only lift stones that weighed around 5 kilograms. Even so, this was still very cool because the sight of a rock that was 9 meters away floating up out of thin air was still quite shocking. Ling Han suddenly had an idea. Although 5 kilograms of strength wasn't much, if he secretly slashed someone's back with a saber or sword, it should be very destructive. He tried to move a small rock using his spiritual power to move it. Pung, the rock was shot out and smashed into the wall, leaving behind a white dot. Its might could only be considered negligible. If he wanted to use this to injure or kill someone, it seemed like he was really thinking too much. That's not right. There is no distance for spiritual power. If that is the case, wouldn't I be able to continuously accelerate the speed of that rock? Ling Han instantly felt enlightened. He picked up a small rock and pushed it out. Spiritual power caught up to it and pushed again, and again. Soon, the rock continued to speed up. In fact, it even broke through the speed of sound, twice the speed of sound, but immediately, with a pa, it exploded. At 2 times the speed of sound, it also placed a huge burden on the rock itself, and it couldn't bear the pressure and exploded. Yet Ling Han was pleasantly surprised. This proved that his deduction was feasible. At 2 times the speed of sound, this is even more powerful than an ordinary gun. Furthermore, it is impossible to guard against it. Even a 5th change could possibly be killed with a single strike. Ling Han murmured to himself. Most importantly, under 2 times the speed of sound, this attack would not make a sound because it was much faster than sound. If it was an attack from behind, how was a person supposed to dodge? I have to forge a few short swords, and they have to be able to bear the massive pressure of 2, 3, or even 5 times the speed of sound. Ling Han's heart throbbed wildly. This would become another trump card of his. Apart from setting up formations and concocting alchemical pills, spiritual power finally had a direct destructive ability. Young master, I've broken through to blood transformation tier. The little female attendant's cheerful and excited voice rang out. Ling Han turned around and said with a smile, Huan Shui is very impressive. You broke through just like that. Although it was overwhelmingly slower than him, Huan Shui had only used a dozen over days in total. This was still extremely shocking. Huan Shui was very pleased. To her, Ling Han's praise was the greatest source of pride in her life. The little handmaiden came out of seclusion, so Ling Han naturally had someone he could order around. He had Huan Shui go to the weapon shop and have the shop order the weapon he needed. The material had to be hard enough, light enough, and incredibly sharp. Then, if it attacked him from behind at more than 3 times the speed of sound, he was sure that even he would not be able to dodge. Once this weapon was forged, Ling Han would possess a true trump card. In terms of weapons, however expensive the materials were, as long as one was willing to pay, they would definitely be able to obtain them. This wasn't a spirit tool. Thus, Huan Shui returned very quickly and told Ling Han that the weapon shop had already accepted his order. They would have someone work overnight, and he would definitely be able to get it by tomorrow afternoon at the latest. Ling Han nodded in understanding. That could only wait until tomorrow. He continued to comprehend the formation patterns. This was really extensive and profound, making him feel like he had to study it for his whole life. A night passed, and after Ling Han finished cultivating early in the morning, he discovered that he could no longer advance any further. He had really cultivated to the end of first change. Ling Han wasn't in a hurry to break through. His cultivation level was advancing too quickly, and he needed time to stabilize his foundations. However, this didn't need too much time. Originally, he had planned to break through to second change before participating in the hunting competition. He had not thought that he would develop a trump card like spiritual power, and this made breaking through to the next cultivation level less urgent. It would be safer to completely stabilize his cultivation level before breaking through. In the afternoon, Huan Shui went to get the weapons. It wasn't long before she returned with 9 gleaming small swords. They were only as long as a finger, and their blades were extremely thin and light. Their overall shape was completely streamlined, and if they flew in the air, that would decrease the resistance significantly. Ling Han tried to slice the rock with the tip of his sword. Sparks immediately appeared on the rock, and a light mark was easily left behind. Young master, the shop says that these are forged from black river metal, and belongs to the category of special metals. The little female attendant said from the sidelines. I've taken a look, and only this fits young master's requirements. The material itself is light and hard, and after being polished, it is extremely sharp. However, it's so expensive. She immediately revealed a pained expression. The 9 swords actually cost more than 2 million Dark North coins. This was practically robbery. Yet Ling Han revealed a smile. It's worth it. This money is worth it, haha. He grabbed a small sword with his spiritual power, then threw it out. Continued to speed up. 2, 2, 2. The speed of this sword increased explosively, doubling the speed of sound 2 times, 3 times. The small sword shot into the wall, directly creating a small hole, and continued to shoot out. With a thud, it stabbed into the wall on the opposite side, and only then did it stop. Ling Han leaped over and pulled out the small sword. The tip of the sword was still intact, and there was no damage at all. It was indeed hard. He was very satisfied. However, it was not easy to experiment in this group of residences. Thus, he went to the forest at the back. There were a lot of rocks here. Xiao, the flying sword rose again, reaching 3 times the speed of sound, and instantly pierced through a rock that was about a foot thick. What terrifying destructive power! If anyone told him that spiritual power couldn't kill people, he would slap them in the mouth. 3 times the speed of sound is the limit? Ling Han murmured. Though this might was no longer weak, if extreme bone tier elites reacted in time, they would still be able to send the flying sword flying with a single punch. The speed at which he delivered an attack was definitely faster than the speed of movement of his body, so even if he could not dodge, it did not mean that he could not send the attacker flying. There's a saying that goes, one would not be able to cover the ears before thunder booms. If the speed of this sword could be so fast that even if one's eyes could catch sight of it, one wouldn't be able to raise their hand in time. Then, even if it was a head-on attack, how would the other party be able to block it? Ling Han murmured. His eyes lit up, and with a wave of his right hand, shua, the small sword shot out again. Meanwhile, his spiritual power continued to move. This was a fusion of mystical power, spiritual power, and physical power. The most unique thing about spiritual power was that it could ignore distance. As long as it was within the range that spiritual power could reach, it could be reached with a single thought. Thus, with the stimulation of spiritual power, the flying sword that had originally reached twice the speed of sound began to speed up, instantly reaching 3 times the speed of sound, then more than 3 times, and finally reached 4 times the speed of sound. This was the limit. Unless Ling Han's spiritual power improved further, or he could obtain lighter materials, Only then would he be able to continue increasing the speed of the flying sword. A head-on attack at 4 times the speed of sound. Even extreme bone tier elites would find it very hard to withstand such a blow. Ling Han nodded in satisfaction. He even tried to throw out all 9 swords at the same time, but to say nothing of 9, even the might of 2 swords shooting at the same time would decrease drastically. It was far less threatening than 1. Forget it. Before his spiritual power reached its peak, he had best use 1 first. He returned to his quarters and calmly prepared himself. It was not for the sake of hunting, but to stabilize his foundations. When he thought that he had reached a consummate, flawless level, he would attempt to break through to second change. Time passed quietly, and it was already the day of the hunting competition. He naturally wouldn't walk over. Instead, he called for a car. The Imperial Palace was located at the position of the dragon's head in the Imperial capital, while the Imperial hunting ground was located at the position of the dragon's tail. It would take some time to travel from the Imperial Capital Academy. Even by car, it would take more than 2 hours. The car couldn't possibly come too close, and stopped at a far distance. The Imperial hunting ground was a forbidden area, and even the 4 great generals and others couldn't barge in for no reason, let alone commoners. Ling Han strolled casually, and soon arrived at the entrance to the hunting ground. This place was heavily guarded. Before he managed to enter, he saw a carriage drive over, surpassing him, and stop at the entrance. The carriage door opened, and a maid in green alighted first. She took out a ladder and placed it on the ground. Only then did a beautiful woman in white walk out. As the mountain wind blew past, her white dress fluttered, as if she was dancing gracefully, having a kind of graceful and divine air about her. However, Ling Han glanced at the woman in white, and instantly revealed an expression of displeasure. That was because this woman with an extremely strong, divine air was precisely Feng Ruoxian. She slowly descended to the ground, and the soldiers in front of her immediately clasped their hands in greeting, appearing very respectful. This was a female count that had been personally bestowed the title by the Holy Emperor. She was the only one in the imperial capital. Though she did not have any real power from a certain aspect, she was still a relative of the imperial family. Feng Ruoxian would be gentle and tactful towards anyone, and respond with a smile, causing those soldiers to feel overwhelmed by flattery. How could there be such a gentle and amiable woman? Pretense, she really knew how to put on an act. Only then did Feng Ruoxian glance at Ling Han. There was a hint of surprise on her pretty face. What was going on here? Why had she encountered Ling Han here? Hadn't she already told the imperial princes to disqualify Ling Han? Why had this guy come again? Did he think that just because he had come here after begging someone, he could enter? How naive. She really wanted to walk over and mock Ling Han. Previously, he had refused her offer to recruit him, and now he knew how painful it was, right? However, in front of everyone, she was a gentle fairy in the form of a celestial maiden. So how could she possibly destroy her own image and reveal her malicious side? Sister Xian. Right at this moment, a young man walked out of the hunting ground. He looked to be in his mid-20s and was extremely handsome. His whole body was surging with vitality, and there was an oppressive feeling about him. All the soldiers immediately bowed and said in unison, "Greetings, Your Imperial Highness." Feng Ruoxian also cracked a smile and said, "Brother De Yang." This young man was none other than the 94th son of the current emperor. His name was Chun Deyang. Chun Deyang was very proud. He walked over and cast a look at Ling Han before turning to Feng Ruoxian and asking, "Who is he? Why are you looking at him?" He was filled with jealousy. Feng Ruoxian deliberately gave an "oh" and said a bit aggrievedly, "Brother Deyang, he is Ling Han." Chen Deyang looked towards Ling Han, his eyes shining brightly, a bit of killing intent appearing on his face. He had heard Feng Ruoxian say that there was someone who had similarly come from Huju City harassing her, and she did not make too much of a fuss about it because that person was one of her own. However, she was very troubled. And now, this person actually dared to come to the imperial hunting ground? How audacious. He smiled at Feng Ruoxian and said, "Sister Xian, leave this matter to me. With that said, he strode towards Ling Han. Because he was an imperial prince, for soldiers immediately followed him to ensure his safety. You kneel. Chun Diang pointed at Ling Han, his expression filled with disdain, when he was less than 3 feet away from Ling Han. Ling Han pondered for a moment before clasping his hands and saying, 94th Imperial Highness. No matter who it was, even if they were the 4 great generals or the council chairman, they would still have to address Chen Diang as your Imperial Highness when they saw him. This was etiquette. There could not be any miss in etiquette or it would leave a bad impression. Then, he asked, in the rules of ceremony of the medium saint, there is no such thing as kneeling. Even upon meeting the Holy Emperor, one only has to bow in respect. May I know if your Imperial Highness's command for me to kneel is superior to the Holy Emperor? Though the Holy Emperor had outstanding martial arts skills and had a long history of merit, he did not establish a practice for everyone to worship him. When everyone saw him, they did not need to kneel. This was also something that Ling Han admired very much. Chun Diang couldn't help but be startled by his question. If someone really filed a report against him and said that he wanted to surpass the Holy Emperor, then merely the harsh reprimands from the ministers would be enough to make him unable to hold his head high. In the current world, if anyone wanted to suppress the Holy Emperor, that would be a serious crime. The Holy Emperor, His Majesty, is a god. He hurriedly said, Nonsense. Oh, so your Imperial Highness did not mean that. Then I have misunderstood, and will not kneel, Ling Han said calmly. Chun Diang was stunned again. If he were to kneel, then it meant he wanted to surpass the Holy Emperor, but as he had denied it, the latter would also erase the matter of him kneeling completely. It seemed like something was off about this. Feng Ruoxian saw this, and couldn't help but shake her head internally. In this first exchange, Chun Diang was completely defeated. Brother Diang, didn't you make him kneel because he barged into the hunting grounds? She couldn't help but ask. Otherwise, Chun Diang would probably be led around by the nose by Ling Han. That's right. That's right. Chun Diang immediately nodded, regaining his pride. This is forbidden grounds of the imperial family. How can you barge in here? Kneel down quickly and wait for punishment. Ling Han didn't even cast a second look at Feng Ruoxian. She was just a clown, so what need was there for him to take her to heart? He smiled faintly and said, Your Imperial Highness has misunderstood, right? I have received a notice, and have especially come to participate in the hunting tournament. How could I possibly barge in? Nonsense. Chun Diang immediately jumped up. You are not even on the list. Oh, how does your Imperial Highness know? Ling Han spread out his hands. The matter is very simple. Your Imperial Highness only has to take a look, and you would know. There's no need to check. If I say you're not on the list, then you're not, Chun Diang said resolutely. Ling Han ignored him. Instead, he looked at a soldier and said, Logically speaking, you guys should be verifying the identity of the person who came, right? The soldier couldn't help but glance at his other 3 companions. He hesitated for a moment before nodding and saying, Yes. Then come and verify my identity, Ling Han said with a smile. Chun Diang still wanted to speak, yet he was pulled back by Feng Ruoxian. The woman said, If we let him try, he would definitely not be able to pass. It would just confirm his crime of deceiving the emperor. Chun Diang nodded repeatedly. That's right, that's right. That was the logic. Why hadn't he thought of that? He didn't stop them. Instead, he nodded at the 4 soldiers. With Chun Diang's permission, the 4 soldiers brought Ling Han to the checkpoint ahead of them. There was a fingerprint scanning device here, and it was the same as one at the Alchemist Association and Formation Masters Association's entrance. After verifying one's identity, the person who entered would be displayed. Ling Han walked over and placed his thumb on it. Instantly, a green-colored light flashed. This was permission to be admitted. Chun Diang and Feng Ruoxian both gaped in shock. What was going on? Your Imperial Highness will meet later. Ling Han strode past the barrier and even waved his hand behind him. In the second exchange, Chun Diang was defeated once more. Stop right there. Chun Diang was dazed for a moment, then immediately jumped up and chased after him in large strides. He said, "You must have done something. It is impossible for you to appear on the list." Ling Han pretended to be surprised and said, "Why is your Imperial Highness so sure? The matter of deciding the name list was all done by Lord Yang." Chandiang was anxious, and he blurted out, "Because it was me and my 97th brother who personally erased your name." When these words fell, he instantly realized that something was off, and hurriedly covered his mouth with his hand. Feng Ruoxian couldn't help but sigh. The current holy emperor's might shook the universe, and he was like a god. How had he given birth to such a son? However, when a dragon gave birth to 9 sons, they were all different. The holy emperor had more than 100 sons, so it was very normal for a few of them to be good-for-nothings. Ling Han chuckled and said, "So my name has actually been crossed out by your Imperial Highness? I wonder what I did wrong that caused your Imperial Highness to be so angry." Chandiang stuttered. How could he say that? Because he and 3 other brothers wanted to perform in front of Feng Ruoxian. They personally came, and using coercion and bribery, he and his 97th brother personally crossed out Ling Han's name. If he revealed this, he would definitely be punished by the Holy Emperor. Though he was the son of the Holy Emperor, the person he revered the most was still this father of his. He feared him to the core. His Imperial Highness is only joking. Feng Ruoxian walked over with a smile, making people feel comfortable from the bottom of their hearts. Yes. I was just joking," Chandiang hurriedly said. He wasn't stupid enough not to take advantage of the situation. Ling Han also smiled and said, "Heh, it's good that you're joking. Otherwise, if rumors spread that your Imperial Highness tampered with the name list in private, it would be very detrimental to your Imperial Highness's reputation." Chandiang could only swallow his anger. At this time, even if he was an Imperial Prince, he could only admit defeat first. Just you wait, he would definitely not give up. He actually dared to set him up. Ling Han turned on the optical computer, and after fiddling with it for a while, a voice immediately sounded. "Because it was me and my 97th brother who personally erased your name." It was Chandiang's voice. Fuck. Chandiang wanted to charge forward and kill him right away. This guy actually recorded it. Instantly, he felt apprehensive. If the recording was not erased, it was possible that Ling Han would leak it out at any time, which would be greatly disadvantageous to him. Ling Han smiled at Chandiang and said, "Then, your Imperial Highness, I shall take my leave first." Chandiang was like a defeated rooster, and could only watch as Ling Han left. After 3 exchanges, Chandiang was completely defeated. Ling Han strode forwards. He did not hate Chandiang. This kind of profligate young master was not qualified to be taken to heart by him. What he was angry about was Feng Ruoxian. She was really killing people without spilling blood, endlessly causing trouble, which was detestable. At first, he only detested Feng Ruoxian, and planned to never see her again. But now, he felt an urge to give this woman a good beating. After the barrier, there was a brick path. It was very long, and there were large trees planted on both sides. Green leaves covered the ground, and it did not appear bleak just because it was winter. Ling Han followed the path, and after walking for about 10 minutes, a massive plaza appeared ahead of him. It was really very big. Its length and width was around 900 meters, and a tall platform was built on the north side. There was even a canopy built on it which could block the rain and the sun. At present, there was no one on the high platform, but there were a considerable number of people standing in the plaza beneath the platform. At a glance, most of them were young people. Ling Han, why have you come?" Shenyuan Dingwa immediately walked over. He just happened to be nearby. Ling Han smiled and said, "I pulled some strings, so my name is on the list again." Shenyuan Dingwa was astounded. Ling Han's name had been crossed out by several imperial princes. So who would have such a great authority to add Ling Han's name back? Could it be that he wasn't afraid of offending those few imperial princes? No matter what, this person would have to be on the level of the 4 great generals, Grand Tutor Hong and the others. But the problem was, among these mighty figures, which of them would be willing to stand up for Ling Han? The difference in status between the 2 sides was really too wide. Ling Han didn't even have the right to have them know his name. Your relations are really tough, he said sincerely. Ling Han chuckled. The chairperson of the Formation Masters Association naturally was strong enough. Even the four great generals had to give Chun Hao some face. Seeing that Ling Han didn't say who this person was, Shenyuan Dingwa didn't ask any more questions. Although he was curious, he didn't go as far as to overstep his boundaries. There are really a lot of people here today. Shenyuan Dingwa changed the topic. Though the Holy Emperor has said that those in extreme bone tier should not come and join in on the excitement, leaving the chance to the youngsters, there are still a great many people that have been stuck at the peak stage of fifth change for many years. To speak of nothing else, that seventh brother of mine is here. He pointed at a man not far away. This seventh son of the Shenyuan clan looked to be in his 30s, and even had a beard. His whole person appeared to be very rough, and was very different from a pretty boy like Shenyuan Dingwa. They most likely weren't born from the same mother. Shenyuan Leshui has already reached the fifth change 10 years ago, Shenyuan Dingwa said softly. Although he hasn't reached the extreme bone tier yet, he's been at the peak stage of the fifth change for far too long, and he's already cultivated powerful techniques. He's not much inferior to the first extreme. Ling Han nodded. Although it was difficult to break through to the next major tier, the people here were all descendants of inscription tier and even enlightenment tier, so they naturally had other means to increase their strength. They couldn't be treated as an ordinary fifth change. Then are you confident? He asked. Shenyuan Dingwa chuckled and said, initially, I was indeed inferior. After all, he definitely has refined the mystical power to a purer level, and he has also cultivated special techniques. However, after obtaining so much honey from the purple wasps, my physique and physical power have both improved astonishingly. It's definitely not that I can't have a chance. Ling Han nodded. That's good. What are you two whispering about? A delicate, seductive voice rang out, and an enchanting beauty appeared, swaying her plump bottom. It was Yin Shoujing, the bewitching beauty. Shenyuan Dingwa took the initiative to step back, maintaining a safe distance. This bewitching woman was fatally alluring, and provoking her would only lead to misfortune. Ling Han smiled and said, I was just saying that we haven't seen each other for a few days, and Miss Yin has become even prettier. Yo, little brother Ling is really getting better and better at talking, making big sister so happy. Yin Shoujing squinted her eyes into slits, making one's heart flutter. Looks like it's going to be very difficult to become the champion of the hunting competition this time. Qin Xingho walked over. Although the seniority of the few of them were different, their ages were similar. Thus, they were actually very close to each other. Who would have thought that our brothers and sisters would also participate? Tang Yu walked over and said, It'll be great if we can enter the top 10 this time. Hee. Shenyuan Dingwa, Qin Xingho, and Yin Shoujing all laughed. They didn't dare to be too sure, but they definitely wouldn't aim for just the top 10, because only the first place would receive personal guidance from the Holy Emperor on martial arts techniques. Apart from the first place, there was absolutely no difference between the second place and the 10th place. Ling Han. 4 men walked over together. Ling Han didn't recognize 3 of them, but one of them was Chun Diang. He walked last, and it seemed like he didn't want to encounter Ling Han. This was very normal. After all, Ling Han had something on him. Greetings, your Imperial Highnesses. Shenyuan Dingwa and the others bowed at the same time. The 4 men nodded. Aside from Chen Diang, the other 3 were Chun Jingye, ranked 89th, Chen Xianxia, ranked 91st, and Chen Lixing, ranked 97th. I really never thought that you would be able to appear here, Chen Jingye said coldly. Ling Han smiled and said, What's so strange about me appearing here? Humph, it's fine even if you have come. Since you're here, you have to be careful. A baleful expression appeared on Chen Jingye's face, and he continued, Hunting is a dangerous activity. This was a blatant threat. Ling Han smiled calmly and said, Thank you for your concern, Your Imperial Highness. I will be careful. Chen Jingye humphed in resentment. He had initially wanted to scare Ling Han into begging for mercy. However, he hadn't expected this brat to be so calm. No wonder he dared to keep pestering Feng Ruoxian. He was really shameless and bold enough. He humphed and did not speak further. Xianxia continued and said, "Let me give you a piece of advice. It would be best for you to leave immediately." Meanwhile, Chun Lixing smiled and said, "I think this is even better. Everyone says that this is the second Hong Tianbu, and I really want to see how strong you are." Judging by his expression, it seemed like he didn't think much of Hong Tianbu either. Ling Han shook his head internally. Looks like these 4 imperial princes had been spoilt rotten, and that was why they were so condescending. The fact that Hong Tianbu could be acclaimed as a supreme freak must be because his title came from genuine strength. "It is your father that is awesome, not the 4 of you." His desire to battle instantly dropped to rock bottom, and he couldn't be bothered to mock these 4 guys anymore. That was really too demeaning to him. Hong Tianliang is here," Shenyuan Dingwa suddenly said. Even Chun Jingye and the other imperial princes looked over. Although they said that they were disdainful of Hong Tianbu, in reality, Hong Tianbu was the strongest prodigy of the younger generation. Perhaps he would become a real big shot soon, and in terms of strength he could match the 4 great generals, the council chairman, and other veteran elites. In fact, some people deduced that he already had this kind of strength by now, but he did not show it. Thus, as Hong Tianbu's younger brother, Hong Tianliang also received a lot of attention. Ling Han also glanced at him, and couldn't help but feel slightly surprised. That was because Hong Tianliang's current aura was very unstable. Occasionally, it would seep out of his body. It was obvious that he had just broken through not too long ago. This was not strange. What was strange was that this guy's aura was actually blackish-purple in color. When a cultivator advanced into first change, their blood would turn from red to purple, and when it became completely purple, he would have reached peak stage of first change. This was a very obvious characteristic. And if the blood turned blackish-purple, what did that mean? Second change. At the end of the second change, the blood would turn black, and the process of second change was for blood to turn from purple to black. Blood affected aura, so unless one had cultivated a special cultivation technique, the qi and blood emitted would be the same color as their blood. Thus, Hong Tianliang had most likely advanced to second change. This also explained why his aura was so unstable. This was what surprised Ling Han the most. This guy actually surpassed him in terms of cultivation level. It should be known that Ling Han's advancement was already very, very fast. It was indeed surprising that he could still catch up to him. Hong Tianliang's confidence soared. When his eyes swept over Ling Han, there was a hint of challenge and disdain, as if he was saying that Ling Han was no longer worthy of being his opponent. Why has this guy become a second change? Qin Xingho asked in surprise. The Hong clan gang was a force that could contend with the Qin clan gang. Thus, he naturally would also be concerned about Hong Tianliang's cultivation level. When this guy entered the academy, he was clearly only in Meridian Opening tier, and now, not only had he advanced into Blood Transformation tier, he had even reached second change. Though there are indeed some medicines that can allow one's cultivation level to rapidly increase, it can also cause one's foundations to be unstable. You must temper your cultivation level well. If you rashly break through, not only will it affect your success rate, you may even face a life-threatening danger, Shenyuan Dingwa said. Tang Yu shook his head and said, "That's because you guys are not aware. A few days ago, Hong Tianliang left the academy. It's said that he was called over for special training by that person. That person was naturally Hong Tianbu. Among the younger generation, very few people would directly address Hong Tianbu by his name. They would all use the address of that person instead, as if saying this name directly would make one feel pressured." No wonder. Qin Xingho nodded. With that person's help, even if Hong Tianliang's breakthrough speed is slightly faster, his foundations won't be shaken. Shenyuan Dingwa and the others nodded in agreement. As long as it was related to Hong Tianbu, then no matter how unreasonable the matter was, it would become reasonable because this was a man that could perform miracles. Ling Han suddenly felt an urge to meet Hong Tianbu. What exactly did he look like? He's just a second change. He can't pose a threat. Tang Yu waved his hand. Shenyuan Dingwa and the others all expressed their agreement. They were all peak stage 5th change elites, and they themselves were prodigies who had cultivated to 20 meridians in meridian opening tier. Naturally, they would be able to firmly suppress Hong Tianliang. Yet Ling Han kept feeling that Hong Tianliang's present state was slightly different. He was definitely not as simple as second change. However, so what? Relying on his spiritual power and speed, Ling Han could now rival even first extreme elites. In fact, he could even kill them, so there was no need for him to care about a second change. As time slowly passed, more and more people came. After more than half an hour, the participants should have all arrived. Next, it would be the turn for the real powerful figures to take the field. The first person to arrive was Grand Tutor Hong, an old man who looked to be in his 60s or 70s. His brows and beard were all white, but his complexion was very ruddy. He was tall and sturdy, his back straight, looking very energetic. The second person was Yang Bai, and he wasn't alone. Instead, he had a cute little girl with him. She was only 7 or 8 years old, and this was his granddaughter. He was holding one of her hands, and her bright eyes were looking left and right. She wasn't afraid of strangers at all. These two were the biggest shots. Because the 4 great generals were guarding the borders, it was naturally impossible for them to come. Action since the 2 of them had come. There was only one person who could arrive later than them. The Holy Emperor. Sure enough, after a short while, they heard someone exclaim at the top of their lungs, "The Holy Emperor has arrived." Instantly, everyone became serious and stood solemnly. No one whispered to each other anymore. Even Yang Bai and Grand Tutor Hong, who were sitting on the high platform, stood up and faced eastward. Xiao, a figure flew over and landed on the high stage. "Your Majesty!" Everyone bowed in respect. The emperor had a grand and broad mind, and did not want his subjects to kneel, yet this had garnered even more respect for this holy emperor. After all, respect and reverence came sincerely from the hearts of the people, and was not something as simple and superficial as kneeling. Ling Han looked over. This holy emperor was surprisingly young. He looked to be in his 40s at most, and his aura was reserved, as if he was an ordinary person. However, his eyes were too abundant with life, instantly making him have an air of dignity without being angry. This holy emperor was simply standing there, yet he was exuding a boundless aura of dominance. It was like if the sky were about to collapse. He only needed to calmly raise his hand to hold up the collapsing sky before pressing it back upwards. Ordinarily, this holy emperor should be over 100 years old. Ling Han didn't think that he had ingested everlasting youth pill or something of the sort. Did men need it? Then, it must be that this holy emperor had long since cultivated to an extremely high cultivation level, and his lifespan had greatly increased. Thus, the rate at which his appearance was aging had naturally slowed down. In comparison, Grand Tutor Hong and Yang Bai were considerably inferior. Ling Han had only found out not too long ago that this holy emperor's name was Chun Fengyan, and it was Xinyuan Dinghua who had told him this. Ordinary people would not be able to know, and would not dare to ask around either. Chun Fengyan nodded before raising his hand and sitting down. The purpose of organizing this hunting competition is to stimulate the vitality of the younger generation. Don't look at how calm and peaceful it is now, but in the near future, it may be a different situation, this top cultivator of the world said. His voice was not loud, but it was clearly heard by everyone. "Yes, Your Majesty," everyone roared. Many of them were flushed with excitement. Chun Fengyan had been cultivating in seclusion for most of the time. To say nothing of hearing the holy emperor's words, even meeting him was an extravagance. "Then let's begin," Chun Fengyan said with a wave of his hand. Everyone bowed in the direction of the high platform, and only then did they turn around and set out towards the mountainous forest. Before this, everyone had already been informed of the detailed rules of the tournament. Each person could only act alone, and could not form cliques. Otherwise, the prey they killed would not be considered. In this colossal mountainous forest, there was a large amount of surveillance. The coverage had reached about 90%, so no one could have any thoughts of getting lucky. In another aspect, with the existence of surveillance, it was easy to tally everyone's results. The tournament time was 3 days. During this time, the participants could attack each other, but they definitely couldn't deliberately kill each other. Don't forget that there were surveillance devices keeping watch at all times. Xianxia patted Ling Han's shoulder before dashing off. This competition both depended on one's abilities and also depended on one's luck. If one encountered some normal demonic beasts within these 3 days, they definitely wouldn't be able to get a good result. Thus, those like Xianxia, Qin Xingho, and the others could all possibly obtain the title of champion. Additionally, the optical computer could only connect to a specific platform here to check one's personal results, as well as the results of others. Little brother Ling, when big sister gets first place, I'll devour you as a reward when I come back. In Xiujing giggled. She also leaped up and left, her colorful dress fluttering in the wind like she was a butterfly. She was indeed a bewitching maiden. She would never forget to tease others. Ling Han wasn't in a hurry. In any case, he had 3 days, so he didn't want to scramble in this little bit of time. However, in just a few minutes, the hunting credits leaderboard had already changed. Someone had completed the first kill and rushed to first place on the leaderboard, and with one, there would be 2. Immediately, someone leaped into first place, pushing that person from before to second place. At the beginning, the changes to the credits leaderboard were the most drastic. One could look at it every few minutes, and the top 10 or even top 50 in fact would all become different. There was a clear map in Ling Han's mind. There were a total of 3 areas in this hunting ground. The first area was basically filled with meridian opening tier level demonic beasts, but occasionally, there would also be blood transformation tier ones. When they reached the second area, those were mostly demonic beasts of blood transformation tier. There was a small number of meridian opening tier and extreme bone tier demonic beasts. After the third area, it would be the territory of extreme bone tier demonic beasts. However, even in the third area, there were pitifully few extreme bone tier demonic beasts. Ling Han's target was the third area. However, if he wanted to reach the third area, he had to first pass through the first area and the second area. He didn't use the shuttle steps. Although this would allow him to leave his competitors in the dust, exposing his strength too early wasn't a good idea, especially when someone clearly wanted to harm him. Action after crossing this mountain, he entered into the second area. What lay in front of him was a great river. The waves were very turbulent, and its width was about 300 meters. There were no bridges built. With how fast the waves were, wanting to swim across seemed to be a very unrealistic thing to do. Then, aside from sprouting wings and flying over, the only other option was to reach the speed of sound and break through the waves. This naturally excluded the people of the meridian opening tier. From a certain aspect, it also ensured everyone's safety. After all, in the second area, if there were more blood transformation tier beasts, it would be too dangerous for meridian opening tiers to enter. In front of him, he saw a considerable number of people using movement techniques. They turned into a wisp of smoke, stepping on the waves as they left. However, there were some that were halfway across the river, and with a bang they were swallowed by the waves. The waves were too large, and those below the speed of sound could only walk on calm water. In this kind of situation, they had to reach or even surpass the speed of sound. Ling Han leaped up, and without even using shuttle steps, his speed had already exceeded double the speed of sound. He stepped on the waves and crossed the river gracefully. Ong! Ling Han had just stepped onto a river rock when he heard an astonishing beastly roar. Previously, it had been drowned out by the sound of crashing waves, and now that he was here, the sound had become clearer. Not only were there beast roars, but there were also sounds of battle. Clearly, someone had already started fighting with the demonic beasts here. Ling Han turned on the optical computer to check the rankings, and saw that the first place had actually become Xianxia. However, in the blink of an eye, he had been pushed down to second place, and the first place had become Hong Tianliang. He smiled and continued onwards. Similarly, hunting demonic beasts, the points earned from meridian opening tier and blood transformation tier were naturally extremely different. Thus, blood transformation tier elites definitely wouldn't hunt meridian opening tier demonic beasts, and rely on numbers to win. To say nothing of the fact that you would only need to kill 100 of them while others would only have to kill 1, there would not be so many demonic beasts lining up in this mountain for you to kill. Similarly, if one could kill a demonic beast of extreme bone tier, they would naturally get even more points. Ling Han didn't want to waste this little bit of time, because when the time came, he only had to kill one extreme bone tier beast, and his score could possibly soar to first place in a flash. He determined his direction and headed towards the third area. Gu Xiangming, where's that brat? Chun Jingye asked as he used his optical computer to communicate with the people outside. This was against the rules. However, he was an imperial prince, so who would dare to check his optical computer? In reply to your Imperial Highness, Ling Han is presently advancing towards the third area. On the other side, Gu Xiangming replied, and in front of him there was a monitor. On the monitor, Ling Han's movements could be seen. He was the captain of the Imperial Guards, so he naturally had the right to check on any surveillance monitor. The third area? Chun Jingye murmured, appearing very surprised. He's going to the third area to seek death? Chun Diang immediately said. The four brothers were together at this moment. Theoretically speaking, as long as they didn't hunt together, staying together wouldn't be considered as breaking the rules. Perhaps he knows that we're going to make trouble for him, so he ran over there? Chun Xingjie asked. Hee. Chun Lixing sneered. How could this country bumpkin possibly know that we all have powerful techniques that can even kill first extreme demonic beasts? How could this possibly scare us? After him, let's teach this country bumpkin a good lesson. As imperial princes, they actually didn't care about the rewards of a martial arts technique and personal guidance from the Holy Emperor. They had only come to participate in the tournament to show off in front of Chen Fengyan. After all, they had too many siblings. However, when they found out that Ling Han had miraculously appeared in the list of competitors, they were all displeased. Who would be so outrageously bold as to stuff a person that they had crossed out back in? For no other reason than this, they wanted to teach Ling Han a harsh lesson. This involved their pride. Moreover, they still wanted to win Feng Ruoxian's favor, so they naturally wouldn't miss this opportunity. As for the monitors, to say nothing of the fact that there were many blind spots, even if the surveillance devices were right above their heads, they would still be able to shut them down. The four of them set off. As imperial princes, they possessed a deadly weapon that even Shenyuan Dingua and the others would covet. Thus, the third region couldn't be considered forbidden grounds to them. Of course, they didn't dare to go too deep. At most, they would only be able to suppress a first extreme demonic beast, and even if they encountered a second extreme demonic beast, they would be able to stop it. From the second area to the third area, the distance was still quite far. Ling Han spent a whole 2 hours to finally arrive at the end of the second area. In this place, he could practically see no other participants. Ahead of him was a canyon, and after passing through this canyon, it would be the third area. Ling Han strode forwards. As he walked with his keen senses, he discovered that there was a large-scale formation here. This explained why the demonic beasts in the third region rarely appeared in the second region they couldn't come over. The canyon was very long, and Ling Han only arrived at the end after walking for 10 minutes. A desolate land appeared ahead of him. There was no vegetation, and there were only stone slabs placed there. Some were big and some were small, and there were as many as a few thousand of them. As Ling Han walked forwards, he opened the leaderboard to take a look. He saw that Hong Tianliang was actually still ranked first. Was this guy on drugs? He was clearly only a second change, and logically speaking, his abilities shouldn't be all that strong. How could he have suppressed so many fifth change elites? Alarm rose up in his heart, and he couldn't help but stop in his tracks, looking towards a rock that looked like a cow. This rock was considered relatively large among these rocks, but that alone was obviously not enough to attract Ling Han's attention. He stared at it, and kept feeling that there was something off about this stone. Xiao, he snapped his fingers, and a burst of power shot out, striking towards that rock. A muffled sound rang out, and that rock actually stood up like a wild beast. It was not very tall, and only reached Ling Han's shoulder in height. Its length was about 3 meters, and its proportions appeared very out of place. It had a head that was compatible with a crocodile. It was triangular in shape, and its mouth was especially sharp and long. It bared its teeth slightly, revealing black teeth, as if they were forged from gray stone. What kind of creature was this? Ling Han didn't dare to be careless. The aura exuding from this monster surpassed the blood transformation tier, giving him extreme pressure. Was this considered good luck? The moment he arrived, he had encountered a demonic beast that was an extreme bone tier elite. The rock beast stared at Ling Han. Its eyes were very small, and its eyeballs were also grayish-black, completely matching its body. Just now, when it was lying on its stomach, it was very difficult to distinguish it even if its eyes were open. Extreme bone tier beasts had all developed intelligence. The rock beast cocked its head, seeming to be curious. This human was only in the blood transformation tier, and he actually dared to come here? However, the meat of a blood transformation tier should be quite delicious. It immediately moved. Exerting force on its four legs, it charged towards Ling Han. Even though it had four short legs, its explosive speed was not the slightest bit slow. It formed a sonic boom behind it. Pa pa pa, the reverberation spread out in all directions, sending those small rocks flying. 2 times the speed of sound. Ling Han channeled shuttle steps and instantly sped up. He also reached 2 times the speed of sound and retreated to the left. Then he threw a punch at the stone beast. Bang! The force hit, but the rock beast's body only trembled slightly. It turned around and continued to charge towards Ling Han. This was an extreme bone tier, even if it was a first extreme bone tier, had the strength of 2.5 million kilograms, and a demonic beast was even tougher. Ling Han had not erupted yet, so when the force of about 2 million kilograms blasted onto it, it would only slow it down a little at most. Yet Ling Han wanted to wound it? At least one punch was not enough. The stone beast waved its front claws, and instantly, a terrifying power solidified and blasted towards Ling Han. After Ling Han dodged a few times, he had already grasped the attack patterns of the stone beast. He channeled the demonic monkey fists and fired out frequency attack. Pung, pung, pung. After 17 bursts of power passed, the stone beast's attacks finally dissipated, and 3 more bursts of power continued to blast towards the stone beast. But when they hit its skin, only muffled sounds were heard. Its shape was like stone, and its defenses were also extremely high. Ling Han was already certain. The power of the stone beast had reached 3 million kilograms. Unless he boiled his blood and qi, he would definitely be overwhelmed. Though his frequency attack could disperse stronger power, firstly, there was an upper limit, and secondly, he would need to attack multiple overlapping layers of power, which would consume too much energy. If he wanted to disperse a fatal attack or deliver a fatal strike, he could use frequency attack. Otherwise, it was best not to waste mystical power. Ling Han's figure bounced around, mainly dodging. He first observed the demonic beast's attack patterns, and while he was at it, allowed it to expend some of its power. Outside the hunting ground, in the plaza. Of course, mighty figures such as Chun Fengyan, Grand Tutor Hong, Yang Bai, and the others naturally couldn't stay here for 3 days. After the hunt began, they would return and wait for the tournament to end before coming back. However, there were still many people here, and they were all using the optical computer connection platform to watch the progress of the competition. There was a large amount of surveillance in the hunting grounds, and practically everyone's movements could be captured. However, if others were watching, they naturally could not possibly manage to see all of them, and could only choose one to observe. The platform provided a total of 13 views, 10 of which were the images of the top 10 people in the credits leaderboard at present, while the other 3 were random views. Whichever monitor they cut into was whichever one it was, and the characters within were constantly changing. Is Hong Tianliang on drugs? He's already left everyone else behind on the credits leaderboard. I never thought that a second change would actually be so powerful, as expected of that person's younger brother. It is not that he himself is outstanding, but rather that his older brother is too nature-defying, and that is why he has been bestowed with such good fortune. Sigh. I also want to have such an older brother. Most people had locked onto the scene of the first place holder. Hong Tianliang had killed another blood transformation tier demonic beast, and Shenyuan Leshui, who was in second place, had already been left behind by as much as a third of his total scores. Someone suddenly exclaimed, "Guys, Look at the second scene in the random channel. What are you doing? Why are you making a fuss? Cut the crap. I told you to look. So just look. Fuck. The person who had been watching immediately jumped up. What's wrong? Someone beside him asked. Quick, look at the random channel. There's a powerful person. What powerful person? He's fighting in the third area, so don't you think he's fierce? Fuck, really? News spread from 1 person to 10, and from 10 to 100. Instantly, a great many people switched to that scene, and saw a demonic beast that had the body of gray stone was presently engaged in an intense battle with a human. That's a gray rock beast. It's said to become an extreme bone tier after maturity. Someone recognized the origins of that demonic beast. Isn't that Ling Han? Another person recognized the human on the other side of the battle. That's right. It's that guy. Recently, his momentum has been very fierce. He has even defeated Hu Yang. Hu Yang didn't come this time. Could it be that it was because he didn't want to encounter Ling Han? Someone asked with a smile. Who said that Hu Yang didn't come? It's just that he's keeping a low profile now and hasn't made a big fuss about it, so you didn't notice. Oh, so that's how it is. Strange. Isn't Ling Han a first change in blood transformation tier? Even if he has the battle prowess of a 5th change, and was capable of defeating Hu Yang against an extreme bone tier, he should have absolutely no chance of winning. That's indeed the case. Even if a 5th change elite martial artist's blood and chi is boiling, his power is only comparable to extreme bone tier, but firstly, extreme bone tier martial artists can also boil their blood and chi, and secondly, the defenses of extreme bone tai is even tougher. A 5th change martial artist's burst of power would only be able to resist an extreme bone tier martial artist for a while, and it would only be a first extreme bone tier. So, this gray rock beast definitely hasn't reached adulthood yet. And, though the third area is the territory of extreme bone tier demonic beasts, it doesn't mean that there are no blood transformation tier demonic beasts. Damn it, this man and beast speed is too fast. I can't see clearly at all. It can't be helped. After all, a monitor is not the naked eye. After everyone's analysis, their previous shock quickly dissipated. They only felt that Ling Han was extremely audacious to actually dare to run to the third area. However, there were still some people who were curious and kept staring at the optical computer. Moreover, the person in charge of the optical computer also seemed to be more interested in Ling Han. He actually didn't switch the image, allowing those people to continue watching. However, when it exceeded the speed of sound, the monitors could only catch sight of afterimages. Only when the man and beast were in a state of stillness would they be able to catch a clear glimpse of the scene, which made everyone feel curiosity burn in their hearts. 3316 soaring credits after fighting for more than 10 minutes. Ling Han had already figured out the attack patterns of this gray rock beast. In truth, the demonic beast's attacks were very simple. Cast aside all the fanciness and focused on practicality. Ling Han didn't want to waste any more time. With his normal battle prowess, Ling Han definitely wouldn't be able to kill an extreme bone tier beast. He had to use some trump cards. He took out the broken sword and slashed out with it. Shwa, a foot-long sword chi slashed towards the gray rock beast. Bang! The sword chi landed on the gray rock beast, releasing a muffled sound. Gray rock beast's skin actually turned into stone, forming a powerful defense, completely blocking the sword chi. Ling Han was astonished. Previously, the gray rock beast had completely ignored his attacks and allowed him to attack it as if he was just punching its chest weakly. However, it had actually gone to defend against this attack, which was enough to prove the might of the broken sword. This defensive technique was quite interesting. It actually turned a part of his body into stone and further increased his defenses. Thankfully, he had forced it to use this move. Otherwise, if he had used the flying sword to attack first, it was probably impossible for him to succeed. After the attack, the gray rock beast's skin immediately returned to its original state. It stared at Ling Han, or to be more precise, at the broken sword in Ling Han's hand, a hint of wariness in its eyes. It no longer charged around recklessly, but rather began to circle around Ling Han. By the looks of it, this demonic beast had only been playing around with him before. It hadn't taken him seriously at all. Now, it was finally treating him seriously and getting serious. "Come on then," Ling Han said with a smile. He slashed out with his sword, and sword chi swept out. The gray rock beast's skin once again turned to stone, taking this strike head-on. Then, it opened its mouth and spat out a streak of dark light, which counterattacked Ling Han. This dark light flew extremely quickly. Though Ling Han dodged at the first instant, the corner of his clothes was still touched. Gray spread out, and his clothes became heavy. A large portion of them had actually turned into stone. Aside from turning its skin into stone and increasing its defenses, this demonic beast could actually turn it into an attack and turn its opponent into stone as well. Ling Han forcefully tore off the corner of clothing that had turned into stone, and said to Gray Rock Beast, "Stone Beast, this ability of yours is not bad. Why don't you follow me in the future and become my lackey?" Pooh, the response was another dark attack from the Gray Rock Beast. "Has no one told you that it's immoral to spit randomly?" Ling Han asked with a smile. He naturally knew that though his affinity was very strong, it wasn't strong enough to make an extreme bone-tier beast eagerly follow him. With a soft exclamation, the broken sword in his hand slashed repeatedly, while he casually tossed small swords onto the ground. This would soon become a deadly weapon. The gray rock beast's attention was completely focused on the broken sword. As for those small swords, it wasn't a spirit tool, so it was extremely ordinary. It didn't care at all. Ling Han feigned a frontal attack, and the broken sword slashed madly. The gray rock beast was also spitting out dark light madly. It only had to touch Ling Han, and it would be able to petrify this human's body, allowing it to easily catch up and crush him to death. "Go!" With a thought from Ling Han, a small sword floated up from the ground out of thin air. Then, it suddenly sped up and instantly shot up to 3 times the speed of sound, so fast that there was no sound at all. Pooh, the small sword shot into Gray Rock Beast's left ear. This strike was too fast, and it just happened to be in the blind spot of the Gray Rock Beast's vision. There was not the slightest bit of sound, and it was only when the flying sword was about to reach it that the Gray Rock Beast finally sensed it. At this moment, it was naturally impossible to dodge. The small sword was extremely sharp, and added with the power boost of 3 times the speed of sound, it directly sank into the Gray Rock Beast's head. Ong! This demonic beast instantly went berserk. Though it had suffered a fatal injury, but because the sword was still stabbed there with the vitality of extreme bone tier, it was completely capable of holding on for a while. Pounced madly at Ling Han. Boom! Its blood and chi was already boiling. Not only had its power skyrocketed, its speed had also reached about 2.3 times the speed of sound. Ling Han hurriedly dodged. Previously, he hadn't channeled shuttle steps to the maximum, and his speed increased again. On the other side, he controlled his spiritual power and suddenly pulled. Pooh! A spurt of blood spurted out, and the flying sword had already flown out of Gray Rock Beast's left ear. Bang! The Gray Rock Beast instantly collapsed to the ground, its limbs twitching violently. It soon stopped. Ling Han panted heavily. With the cultivation level of blood transformation tier and furthermore a first change at that, he had actually killed a demonic beast at the extreme bone tier. Even if he was not the first in history, there were definitely very few that could accomplish such a magnificent feat as long as spiritual power was used properly. Its destructive power was definitely not inferior to mystical power. Of course, he could not use it head-on in a confrontation. Otherwise, with Ling Han's current strength of about 5 kilograms, he would not even be able to match an ordinary person. He turned on the optical computer to check, and to say nothing of getting first place, his credits were still a pitiful 0. This should be because the people at the rear was confirming the strength of this Gray Rock Beast, so they needed some time. He was not in a rush, and used the broken sword to cut open the Gray Rock Beast. This was a demonic beast of extreme bone tier, so its blood and flesh would definitely be very nutritious. However, it was a shame that there were surveillance devices here. Ling Han didn't want to expose the secret of the essence-nurturing gourd, so he could only obtain some important parts of the beast. This thing. When Ling Han sliced into the lower half of the Gray Rock Beast, he discovered a very long thing. Such a long beast cock. Ling Han gritted his teeth and said, If I eat this, I'll definitely die from overnourishment. If I sell it, I'm sure that many men will pay a huge price for it. I'll cut it off. Though he kept picking through the most valuable parts, there was still a large bag of beast meat that had been cut out, which made him sigh. He would find a blind spot in the surveillance and then toss the meat into the gourd. It would really be too stupid to just carry it like this. Just as he was busy, the people at the rear also confirmed the level of this gray rock beast, and his points immediately changed. Outside the hunting ground in the plaza. What's going on? Why has someone suddenly charged to the second place? Everyone was stunned as they looked at the name that had just appeared on the leaderboard. Half a day had already passed, and it was not like when the competition had just begun, when killing one more or one less meridian opening tier demonic beast could cause a great change in the leaderboard. Now, everyone's results had stabilized, and their rankings could only be surpassed one after another. How could there be a big jump? Ling Han. Who is Ling Han? Qin 13, you've been away from the academy for too long. Don't you know that a second Hong Tianbu has appeared now? Who? Just this person? You've got to be kidding, right? A monster like Hong Tianbu would only appear once every 100 or 1,000 years. So how could there possibly be a second Hong Tianbu? Just look at his battle merits first. Everyone on the leaderboard, aside from their name and marks, also had their respective battle merits. Every demonic beast they killed would be recorded in detail, such as what level this demonic beast was at and how many marks they could obtain from it. Unlike the others, who had several kills, especially Hong Tianliang, who was ranked first and had already killed more than 20 demonic beasts. In the record for Ling Han's battle merits, there was only one. Adult Gray Rock Beast, First Extreme, credits of 300. Bender 3317 Greater danger lies behind. When they saw this piece of news, the people in the plaza instantly exploded. What? An adult gray rock beast? A first extreme beast? What kind of joke was this? A blood transformation tier cultivator had killed a first extreme? Looking at Ling Han's information, 19 years old, first change, even if this guy concealed his cultivation level, he would only be second change at most, because when he entered into the academy he was only a meridian opening tier. In just a few months' time, no matter what, he would only be able to advance into second change. Being able to kill an enemy even though it had surpassed him by a major tier in cultivation level meant that Ling Han's true battle prowess had even surpassed first extreme. Otherwise, he would only have defeated his enemy and not killed it. There must be a mistake. That's right. For a blood transformation tier cultivator to kill an extreme bone tier, do you think that it is Hong Tianbu? This person really seems to have the reputation of being the second Hong Tianbu. Everyone was in an uproar. This kind of battle merit was practically blinding. If it was not for the fact that Hong Tianliang had also been pumped full of adrenaline and killed more than 20 blood transformation tier demonic beasts, he would probably be surpassed by Ling Han in an instant. Hurry up and check the recording. Just how was it killed? Everyone went to look for the recording, but the battle between Ling Han and the Gray Rock Beast was really too fast. The surveillance devices couldn't catch sight of it at all. It was all afterimages, and they could only see that as the battle continued, the Gray Rock Beast fell to the ground. It seems like Ling Han fired out some kind of powerful spirit tool, which directly penetrated the Gray Rock Beast's forehead. Look, there's a cold light flying out of Gray Rock Beast's left ear. Although it can't be seen very clearly, it can still be captured by the surveillance. Bender, indeed. Everyone nodded. Then it makes sense. If one used a spirit tool, a blood transformation tier would indeed have a chance of killing an extreme bone tier. Sigh. This gave me a false scare. I really thought that there would be someone so freakish. A considerable number of people thought that the fact that Ling Han could kill a Gray Rock Beast was due to the might of the spirit tool. Immediately, they looked down on him, but there were still some that were stunned. Previously, I had only thought that this Gray Rock Beast had not matured and was still a blood transformation tier. However, now that I have confirmed that it is a first extreme, this is terrifying. After battling with this demonic beast for so long, Ling Han actually hasn't been hit even once. This speed is too shocking. This battle lasted for a whole 17 minutes. Even if Ling Han's blood boiled, He could not possibly have lasted that long. Furthermore, from the image, he had not used this trump card. A blood transformation tier elite being able to burst out with twice the speed of sound. This is too shocking. In the hunting ground, Hong Tianliang killed another blood transformation tier demonic beast, and its colossal body collapsed, causing even the ground to tremble slightly. A faint smile appeared on his face, and he couldn't help but think of his older brother. Though this person was a shadow in his heart, a demon, he had to admit that he had also given him great help. For example, this time, with Hong Tianbu's help, he had entered an ancient site to train. Not only had he obtained a great many treasures, which greatly improved his cultivation level, he had also unlocked a new ability at the same time. His battle prowess was countless times stronger than an ordinary second change. After reaching great accomplishment in battle prowess, he no longer saw Ling Han as a rival. However, he would still battle with Ling Han. Firstly, to wash away his humiliation, and secondly, to snatch back the essence nurturing gourd. When he had confirmed that his position of first place was unbreakable, he would seek out Ling Han. Out of habit, he turned on the optical computer to check his score. As a matter of course, he was first place, and his score was as high as just over 400 points. A one-of-a-kind. He suddenly saw the name that followed behind him, Ling Han. Why had this guy suddenly appeared? Hong Tianliang's vanity was still very strong. Every time he killed a demonic beast, he would look at the leaderboard, and the result every time was that he was continuously widening the gap between himself and the second place. Thus, he was naturally shocked to see Ling Han appear out of nowhere. He looked at Ling Han's battle merits again, and couldn't help but look solemn. He had killed a first extreme demonic beast. He has only relied on the might of a spirit tool, he said coldly, his eyes looking ahead. Fine. I'll charge to the third area, defeat this person, and take back the essence nurturing gourd. He began to advance towards the third area. Of course, he would also kill demonic beasts along the way, and continue to increase his own marks. This brat actually killed a demonic beast of extreme bone tier, Xianxia exclaimed in shock. He only succeeded with the help of a spirit tool. There's no need to take it to heart, Xianxia immediately said. It was destined that the four of them would not be able to snatch the throne. But the relationship between brothers was actually better because of that, because there was no need for them to scheme against each other. Hurry up! We're already not far from the third area. The four of them strode forwards. After passing through the canyon, they arrived at the place where Ling Han and the gray rock beast were battling fiercely. There were still traces of a great battle left here, as well as the gray rock beast's corpse that was still dripping with blood. 97. What are you doing? Chen Diang asked. Chun Lixing was flipping through the gray rock beast, and he soon released a furious roar. This bastard, he took away the gray rock beast's cock. This is very nutritious for men. It is said that it can make your cock as hard as a rock, and specialize in treating all kinds of... Chen Diang faltered. 97th. Why are you in such a rush? Could it be that you are not skilled in that area? Get lost. You're the one who can't. Your whole family can't. Chun Lixing flew into a humiliated rage. Chun Jingye couldn't bear listening to this any longer, and he said, Don't forget, we're all a family. If even this whole family couldn't do it, then who had been the one to beget them? Let's go. Hurry up and give chase. That brat should not be too far away, Xianxia said. The four of them sped up, chasing after the traces that Ling Han had left behind. On the other side, they still had Gu Xiangming keeping an eye on Ling Han from outside, responsible for guiding them in the right direction. It wasn't long before they surrounded Ling Han and blocked him outside a dense forest. Hung, hung, hung. The four of them all sneered. Ling Han kept looking for the next prey, but there were too few extreme bone tier beasts. After circling around for a while, he still didn't see anything. Who would have thought that he would see Chun Xianxia and Chun Lixing right in front of him when he just came out of the forest? And behind him, Chun Diang and Chun Jingye also slowly walked out. All of a sudden, he had fallen under the siege of the four of them. However, he was naturally unafraid. He raised his head to take a look. There were surveillance monitors on the great tree to his left. There's no need to look. We've already had someone turn off this surveillance device, Xianxia said calmly. So, don't expect anyone to come and save you. It was turned off? He was an imperial prince, after all, so he really had a lot of power. Ling Han nodded internally. That was good. Otherwise, he would have reservations when he attacked. Now, however, he could beat him to his heart's content. Hand over the optical computer first, Chun Diang immediately shouted. As long as the recording didn't disappear, he wouldn't be able to rest easy. Kneel, Chun Lixing shouted. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh in spite of himself, and said, You guys each say one thing. What exactly do you want from me? Chun Jingye and the others exchanged looks, feeling that Ling Han's calmness and composure was a bit over the top. Don't waste your breath on him. Capture him first, then give him a good beating, and teach him how to behave, Chun Xianxia said impatiently. All right, the other three nodded. 33-18 defeat Chun Jingye, and the others all knew that Ling Han possessed an extreme bone tier spirit tool. They didn't dare to be careless, and they all retrieved their own spirit tool. We know that you have a powerful spirit tool. However, the more powerful the tool, the more energy it expends. You used this to kill a demonic beast of extreme bone tier. Now, even if you can still activate the spirit tool, how long can it last? If you don't want to suffer too much, kneel down and beg for mercy. The four imperial princes spoke one after another, all of them looking down on Ling Han from their lofty positions. Ling Han chuckled and said, Thank you for your efforts of talking. Would you like a cup of tea? Impudence. You're too stubborn. Attack. The four imperial princes were all enraged, and they all moved. Instantly, for bursts of power blasted over, causing dust to fly into the air. The Holy Emperor was the #1 elite in the world. Though his excellent bloodline had been inherited by the earliest born imperial princes, these four people were all Chun Fengyan's descendants, after all. All of them were at the peak stage of fifth change. The shock waves of power blasted out in unison, their might terrifying. Ling Han humphed, and directly replied with a punch of his own. Pung, pung, pung. Power surged madly, and the five of them began a fierce battle. Hiss, this brat's battle prowess is really fierce. Everyone says that he's the second Hong Tianbu. Looks like he does indeed have some skill. 99th, boil your blood and qi. Good. Chun Lixing's blood and qi immediately boiled, madly increasing his battle prowess. Then he kicked out at Ling Han, and the reverberating wind tore through the air, turning into a wave as powerful as a saber. With his burst of power, Ling Han's pressure immediately increased greatly. After all, he was only at peak stage first change. Should he use an ultimate move? Ling Han smiled faintly as he activated the shuttle steps. He immediately sped up to 2 times the speed of sound. A blood transformation tier elite possessing 2 times the speed of sound. What kind of concept was that? This meant that no blood transformation tier elite could hit him unless they could also possess this kind of speed. Pung, 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 pung. All 4 attacks missed their target. What? Chun Jingye and the others were all astounded. They hadn't expected Ling Han to possess such speed. With this alone, Ling Han was already invincible among those at the blood transformation tier. Although Chun Lixing's blood and qi were boiling, his power skyrocketed, and his speed also increased by leaps and bounds. It was still far from reaching twice the speed of sound. This should be the limit that blood transformation tier cultivators couldn't surpass. However, when Ling Han had been in the meridian opening tier, he had also opened up all the tiny meridians in his body, causing all the meridians to connect, giving him a greater burst of power. In blood transformation tier, he could still unleash astonishing might. No matter how the 4 great imperial princes surrounded and intercepted him, they could not even touch a corner of Ling Han's robes. Use your spirit tool. Chun Jingye gritted his teeth and took out a piece of paper. It was only the size of a fist, and it was filled with an ancient aura. In fact, there was even a chipped corner. He suddenly threw the piece of paper out, and it instantly enlarged, turning into a massive stone lion. There were patterns of light flickering all over its body, and it pressed down on Ling Han. Ling Han immediately dodged, yet discovered that this stone lion had actually locked onto him and was still pressing down on him. A terrifying pressure assaulted him, causing Ling Han's entire body to become incredibly heavy. To say nothing of maintaining 2 times the speed of sound, even moving a single step was difficult. Ling Han let out a soft exclamation, and the broken sword in his hand slashed out. Xiao, the sword light slashed onto the stone lion, and instantly, a few patterns of light dimmed, causing his body to lighten. Xiao, he darted out of the range of the stone lion's suppression. Pong! The stone lion landed, and even the ground trembled. This rock was extremely heavy. Xianxia hurriedly waved his hand, and the stone lion immediately shrunk in size, turning into a streak of light that flew back into his hand. He examined it carefully, and only when he discovered that there was no damage to the stone lion did he heave a sigh of relief. Bender he humphed, and threw the stone lion out again. 89th brother. Let me help you. Chen Diang also drew out his spirit tool. This spirit tool of his looked much more ordinary. It was a long sword, and once it was activated, the blade of the sword shone, like a sword of light. He struck with his sword. Shua! A thick and long flash of sword chi immediately slashed towards Ling Han, reaching 4 times the speed of sound. This was too fast. Even extreme bone tier elites wouldn't be able to dodge at such a close distance. Ling Han still slashed out with his sword to parry. The sword chi shot out by the broken sword was only about a foot long, but its quality was extremely high. With a pa, this sword chi that was attacking him was immediately shattered. The 4 imperial princes all looked stunned. The broken sword in Ling Han's hand was definitely a transcendent tool. Otherwise, even the blade of the sword had been broken, so how could it possibly unleash such terrifying might? Take him down! The 4 of them all looked greedy. Even if they were imperial princes, they only possessed a single spirit tool. Chen Xianxia and Chen Lixing also retrieved their spirit tool. One was a spear while the other was a saber. They could both unleash energy at 4 times the speed of sound, and possessed terrifying might. Ling Han greeted the attack with the broken sword, dispersing all the attacks that came towards him. He was fighting 1 against 4, yet was not at a disadvantage at all. The 4 imperial princes were unable to accept this. The attacks they delivered were all first extreme level, yet they were actually unable to suppress a blood transformation tier. Yet Ling Han knew very well that the attack launched by the spirit tool was equivalent to the cultivation level of the cultivator. It was only might and not actual power. This sounded a little confusing, but it was very easy to explain. The attack unleashed by the spirit tool was more like the flying sword that Ling Han had activated with his spiritual power. In terms of power, it was really very small, but could its might be underestimated? Thus, as long as Ling Han was sharp-sighted and quick enough, and struck at a high enough frequency, he naturally could fight all 4 of them alone. However, passive defense has never been Ling Han's personality. He unhesitatingly boiled his blood and chi, and the total value of his power instantly exploded to 4 million kilograms. Even his speed had increased, reaching about 3 times the speed of sound. Under this kind of high speed, even Ling Han's physique was vaguely unable to bear it. He felt an agonizing pain as if he was being torn into pieces. With a big stride, he had already rushed in front of Chen Diang and shot out a punch. What did the speed of lightning mean? This was it. Facing a punch that was charging at 3 times the speed of sound, even an extreme bone tier would have to treat it with full concentration. If it was a blood transformation tier, how could they block this punch when they could only watch as this blow flew towards them? Pong! Chen Diang was instantly sent flying. Under the tremendous shockwave, he directly passed out. Ling Han turned around and charged at Chen Lixing again. Pong! His battle prowess was far above that of a blood transformation tier cultivator. With a single strike, Chen Lixing was also sent flying and knocked unconscious. The remaining Chen Jingye and Chen Xingjie hurriedly boiled their blood and qi as well. Otherwise, Chen Lixing and Chen Diang would be an example set for their future. After their blood and qi boiled, They were slightly superior to Ling Han in terms of power, and Ling Han's battle techniques overwhelmed them. In a situation when the spirit tool could not unleash its might, how could they possibly be a match for Ling Han? In just a few minutes, they were all defeated by Ling Han. They couldn't withstand Ling Han's burst of power at all. Ling Han thought for a moment, then suppressed the urge to rob these 4 people. No matter how unworthy they were, these 4 people were all Chun Fengyin's sons. Taking their belongings was equivalent to robbing the imperial family. This was a serious crime, but he definitely could not let them off just like that. Ling Han first gave the 4 of them a good beating, then drew some blood on his fingers and began to draw on their faces. After painting the faces of the 4 imperial princes as big garish cats, Ling Han smiled in satisfaction and strode off. After learning this lesson, he was sure that these 4 people would never be able to raise their heads in front of him again. Ling Han strolled through the mountains, looking for a second extreme bone-tier demonic beast. However, though this was a hunting ground, demonic beasts weren't everywhere. This was understandable. The third area was the territory of extreme bone-tier demonic beasts. Theoretically speaking, if this was located in Huju City, it was completely capable of making up the strongest force. Even in the Imperial City, extreme bone tiers could still be called elites. This was the same for demonic beasts. Every extreme bone tier demonic beast occupied an extremely large territory, and in this territory, there was only one extreme bone tier demonic beast. Thus, Ling Han needed to head to another mountain. He definitely wouldn't be able to find another extreme bone tier beast here. On the way, he discovered that Hong Tianliang had once again surpassed him in credits. In fact, the third place was also rapidly catching up to him. Going by this trend, the person in third place would probably be able to surpass him in 1 or 2 hours. Ling Han, however, was unconcerned. In 3 days' time, he only had to kill 3 or 4 extreme bone tier demonic beasts, and he would definitely be able to charge into first place. At midnight, he finally entered the territory of another extreme bone tier demonic beast. Occasionally, he would hear the roars of a bear, startling the birds into flying off in flocks. He followed the sound, and after searching for over 20 minutes, he finally found that demonic beast. This was a black bear, but its size wasn't very large. It was only 1 size larger than a normal black bear, but this was definitely an extreme bone tier being. The aura it exuded was too terrifying. After all, in a head-on clash, he could only just barely match a first extreme demonic beast. Otherwise, he would be crushed to death before he could even use his trump card. Ling Han did not make a move at the first instant. He could only confirm that this was an existence of extreme bone tier. As for whether it was first extreme, second extreme, or third extreme or something stronger, he was not sure. After all, in a head-on clash, he could only just barely match a first extreme demonic beast. Otherwise, he would be crushed to death before he could even use his trump card. This black bear was also a lazy guy. It was lying on the ground and snoring loudly. It was a tyrant of the mountains. Who would dare trifle with it? This was his chance. Ling Han casually waved his hand, tossing several small swords onto the ground. Each sword was separated by a certain distance. He still had one in his hand, and he suddenly threw it at the black bear. With the boost of his spiritual power, it instantly reached 4 times the speed of sound, shooting towards the black bear. The target was the black bear's right eye. Show how fast was 4 times the speed of sound. Ling Han had just moved his hand, and the small sword had more or less arrived in front of the black bear. It looked like the flying sword was about to pierce through the eye, and it was extremely likely that it would take the life of an extreme bone tier demonic beast with a single strike. However, the might of the black bear could be seen at this moment, and as if it had sensed danger, its right paw had already covered its face. Pooh, the flying sword shot onto the bare paw, spurting out a few drops of blood, and sank deeply into the bare paw. With the sharpness of this sword, as long as it did not encounter bone, it could pierce through even an elite of extreme bone tier. Unfortunately, the toughness of the bone of an extreme bone tier elite had possibly surpassed most metals. The flying sword was stuck in the bare paw, unable to pierce through it. Ong! The black bear released a furious roar, and lowered its right paw. Its eyes focused on Ling Han, its killing intent blazing. It didn't even pull out sword, and simply flipped its limbs, charging towards Ling Han. With the explosive power of 2 times the speed of sound, its speed was astonishingly fast. It had practically rushed in front of Ling Han in an instant, and delivered a bare paw strike right at him. Pong! Ling Han took it head-on, but he was immediately sent flying. In this first clash, he had not yet figured out the frequency of the black bear's attack, so he naturally could not use frequency attack. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Hiss, this guy was at least a second extreme. The black bear had gained the upper hand with a single strike, so it naturally took advantage of the victory to pursue fearlessly. It wanted to kill this puny human. Xiao, a small sword floated up, and instantly completed the process of acceleration, stabbing rapidly at the black bear's left ear. Practically an instant later, another small sword floated up from the ground. Xiao, it shot towards the black bear's right eye. After shooting out 2 flying swords in quick succession, there was not the slightest bit of buffer time. Ling Han couldn't help but feel a sharp pain in his mind. This burden was too heavy. The black bear showed its powerful side. With a paw strike, a strong gust of wind swept out, and the first flying sword was instantly sent flying. Furthermore, it lowered its head slightly, and dodged the second flying sword as well. However, it was not so easy this time. The corner of its eye was still scraped, and instantly, blood gushed out. However, this provoked the black bear even more. It didn't care about its momentum and continued to charge towards Ling Han. Ling Han activated shuttle steps. His speed wasn't inferior to the black bear at all, and he caught his breath slightly. Xiao. Another 2 flying swords shot out one after another, shooting towards the black bear. This time, the black bear was even more disheveled. With its high speed, it was impossible for it to turn its body around rapidly, and it had not retracted the bare paw that it had delivered a strike with, so it naturally could not possibly make another sweep. This was the benefit of spiritual attacks. There was no so-called long-term use of techniques. As long as one was strong enough, he would be able to continuously use his divine sense. The black bear could only lower its head, and try as much as possible to avoid it hitting its vital points. At this time, it finally realized that the situation was not good, and stopped its violent rampage, but because of inertia, it was still charging forwards. Xiao, another 2 flying swords shot out. The black bear released a furious roar, and immediately boiled its blood and qi, forcibly increasing its power, and brandished its claws twice. The 2 flying swords were once again sent flying. However, the fatal strike had only truly been launched now. The last 2 flying swords floated up, and shot towards the black bear. Pu. The black bear could no longer parry. One of the 2 flying swords shot into its left eye, while the other pierced into its right ear. Both were aimed directly at its brain. Even an extreme bone-tier demonic beast couldn't withstand such a blow. It immediately wailed in pain, and its body collapsed loudly. Ling Han breathed a sigh of relief and flopped down. He felt like his whole person was about to collapse. Even though he had killed a demonic beast that was at least second extreme in less than 10 seconds, in truth, he had already used up all his trump cards. If the last 2 flying swords could not succeed, then it would be his turn to flee in panic. Most importantly, from the moment he shot out the first flying sword, and when the black bear began its pursuit, this demonic bear had fallen into Ling Han's trap. At that kind of high speed, there was absolutely no way it could stop in time. My spiritual power is still too weak. I've only shot out 9 swords in a row, and there's even a 1 or 2 seconds gap between them, but my head feels like it's about to explode. Ling Han began to summarize this battle. Where had he been inadequate? Spiritual power is really an important battle prowess that has been overlooked. He nodded. If he had not developed the amazing use of spiritual power, even if his blood and qi boiled, he would only be able to match the first extreme, and that would only be for a short 10 minutes. Bear paw. After resting for a while, he jumped up, almost drooling from the corner of his mouth. He was now cultivating body art, so his requirements for food were naturally higher. It needed to contain high energy, and the bare meat of an extreme bone tier was naturally the best. On the plaza. At the same time, those who were paying attention to the leaderboard immediately discovered that the position of first place had quietly changed. Ling Han. His battle merits had only increased by 1 count, and that was killing a black bear, yet it was in existence on the second level of the extreme bone tier. All of a sudden, his score had increased by 400 points, and he had rushed to the first place. He had killed another extreme bone tier being. Hiss, this person's battle prowess was too terrifying. The day hadn't even ended, and he had already killed 2 extreme bone tier demonic beasts. In the next few days, if he could still maintain this kind of efficiency, he would definitely be number 1. What kind of super tool has this brat mastered to actually be so powerful? That shouldn't be the case. There are many more people with more impressive backgrounds than him, and in terms of the might of spirit tool, he can't be ranked first no matter what. How strange. Strange. Everyone felt rueful. This dark horse was really unpredictable. After charging all the way to second place, and just when it looked like he was about to fall down to third place, he suddenly surpassed the rest and charged all the way to first place. Just look at Hong Tianliang, who was in second place, and he had a total of 200 credits less than Ling Han. The gap was already very, very wide. And in the hunting grounds, when they saw Ling Han's points suddenly soar, a great many elites also changed their minds, focusing their attention on the third area. If they continued to roam around in the second area, the gap would only become larger and larger. Pang! Hong Tianliang also saw the change in the rankings, and he was so furious that he kicked down a towering tree. His hands were clenched into fists, and he looked extremely furious. As he saw it, he had risen from the ashes and was already reborn. This was already not something that Ling Han could compare to. Thus, he no longer took Ling Han seriously, and thought that as long as he moved, he would be able to defeat him and take back the essence nurturing gourd. Previously, everything was going according to plan, right until not too long ago. Ling Han actually killed an extreme bone tier beast. This bastard, relying on the might of his spirit tool. Did he still have any shame? This was too shameless. Couldn't you use your true abilities? He strode forwards and had already passed through that canyon, following the tracks that Ling Han had left behind. His optical computer suddenly received a message with Ling Han's coordinates. Who had sent it? Hong Tianliang was surprised. In this place, everyone's optical computer could only log onto one platform to check the credits leaderboard. Who would be able to send him a message? Unless it was someone outside. He made his judgment. Was this real or fake? Could it be that this was meant to lead him astray? He looked at the marks on the ground and compared them against the coordinates, feeling that this should be true. Perhaps, whoever had a grudge against Ling Han wanted to use him to suppress him. Forget it. He indeed had to find Ling Han as soon as possible, and beat him silly so that in the next 2 days, there was no way he would be able to hunt again. After a while, he received another message. It was still the coordinates of where Ling Han was. There was a slight change, which meant that Ling Han was also moving. Hong Tianliang traveled at full speed, and after 20 minutes, he arrived at the latest coordinates. He carefully stuck his head out, only to see that Ling Han was sitting on a rock and barbecuing meat. It was clear that he had stopped here for dinner. The aroma of meat wafted into the air, and he couldn't help but feel himself salivate. He was hungry. On the other side of the monitor, Gu Xiangming sneered. He had drawn out another powerful enemy for Ling Han. He wanted to see how Ling Han would defeat this opponent. Ling Han was roasting meat. He was hungry, so he naturally had to eat. His back was facing Hong Tianliang, but his divine sense was enough to enshroud an area of 9 meters around him. In this area, he knew everything. He had met an old friend. He smiled and said, "You must be hungry after fighting for a day. Want to eat something together?" Hong Tianliang couldn't help but be startled. Ling Han had discovered him. He then smiled and strode out, because he was filled with confidence in his own strength. So what if he had been discovered? He had not planned to launch an ambush from behind in the first place, as it was beneath him to do so. Hong Tianliang walked to Ling Han's side, and also took a large rock to sit down on as he said, Smells good. Of course, what was being roasted was the black bear paw, which was originally the most essence part of it, and secondly, this was extreme bone-tier beast meat. Not long after, golden yellow oil began to seep out of the bear paw. Merely looking at it was enough to make one drool. Come on! Ling Han gave Hong Tianliang half of the spoils. Hong Tianliang didn't hesitate at all. He took it and bit down. Although it was hot enough to make a normal person's mouth swell, for a blood transformation tier elite, this was no big deal. So delicious, he praised. Unfortunately, there is no wine. Ling Han smiled and said, Aren't you afraid that I would have poisoned the meat? I believe you. You don't have to be so despicable, Hong Tianliang said calmly. Ling Han spread out his hands and asked, Did you see me eat it? This Hong Tianliang couldn't help but put down the bear paw, looking at Ling Han in shock. This guy couldn't have really dug a trap for him, right? Thinking back to how Ling Han had defeated Hu Yang 3 times, he had won 2 times in a dishonorable manner. Ling Han chuckled and began to eat heartily. He said, I was just joking with you. Fuck. Hong Tianliang really wanted to curse. This joke wasn't funny at all, okay? He panted a few times. It was unknown if he was going to continue eating, or if he was going to stop eating in a fit of pique. Eat. You'll only have the energy to fight when you're full, Ling Han advised, continuing to eat. That made sense. Hong Tianliang continued to eat, thinking that Ling Han had played a trick on him. Later, he would definitely punch him a few more times, but because Ling Han had treated him to meat, he would hit him lightly. As they ate, Ling Han took out a bottle, poured out a pill, and threw it into his mouth. What medicine are you taking? Hong Tianliang asked casually. Oh, to stop diarrhea. Ling Han answered casually. Stop diarrhea? Hong Tianliang was surprised. When a cultivator had cultivated to the blood transformation tier, his level of being had already taken a huge leap. It was practically impossible for him to have a minor illness like catching a cold, so it was naturally similarly unlikely for him to have diarrhea. Ling Han nodded, pointed at the bear paw and said, I've put laxatives in here, so of course I have to eat medicine to stop diarrhea. Puff. Hong Tianliang spluttered in shock. Have you fucking tricked me again? He coughed repeatedly, wanting nothing more than to throw up all the food that he had swallowed. There were surveillance devices everywhere in this place, and if he leaked shit in public, how would he be able to face others in future? You are really not the slightest bit humorous. I already said I was just joking with you. Ling Han sighed. Ling Han. Hong Tianliang couldn't bear it any longer. He jumped up and pointed angrily at Ling Han. No, he was going to beat him up. He was going to beat him up immediately. Ling Han waved his hand and said, Wait. Wait for what? Hong Tianliang asked. Wait for me to finish eating, Ling Han said very casually. Fuck you. Hong Tianliang roared in fury. You're playing with me like I'm a monkey. He charged out, his hands forming into claws. Show, he shot out a terrifying force. Ling Han couldn't help but smile, and asked, You've learned a new technique? This claw technique was clearly not the technique that Hong Tianliang had used before. His hands had actually turned pure black, and were enshrouded in a layer of mysterious energy.